Good evening. I'm going to call the Foxborough School Committee meeting to order, being about 7:08 on Monday, December 16th. The agenda for tonight is as follows: 7 o'clock visitors, 7:10 approval of minutes, 7:15 teacher and learning highlights, FHS world language, 7:25 p.m. preliminary discussion of proposed FY15 budget, 8 o'clock FY14 budget update, 8:10 enrichment challenge opportunities, 8:20 acceptance of Stop and Shop mini grant, 8:25 other matters, and one of those identified other matters will be the Town of Foxborough Racino Review Committee summary of impact and mitigation analyses report, and we'll cover any other matters in that category as those who want to bring them up. So that's our agenda. We're going to start with visitors. If we have any visitors that wish to be heard this evening. Okay, seeing none, we'll go on to approval of minutes. We have the December 2nd regular meeting, school committee meeting minutes. Do we have any changes or additions, any revisions on that? Okay, do you have a motion to accept the minutes?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, a second?
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
I'm just going to abstain.
And one abstention. Thank you.
I know.
Okay, and now we're going to move on to teacher and learning highlights. Ms. Spinelli.
Yes. As you know, often when we go places, whether it's graduation or concerts or sometimes other schools, sometimes public events, you'll see our American Sign Language students from Foxborough High School signing at these events. And, you know, we see them everywhere, but we've never really had them come and talk to us about what does it mean to take this as a world language and what opportunities are available to them and what do they like about it and why do we include it in the high school. So in your packet, usually we don't have information in the packet about a teaching learning highlight, but we got some great information from our teachers who are Miss Linda Cameron and Jessica McAllister. Right there. So they put together some of the things I knew about and some of the things I didn't even know about that they do. So we thought we'd put it in the packet for you to be able to read ahead of time, and here they are. So our teachers I already mentioned, and our students are Alexandra Howe, Haley Callahan, Julia Broccoli, Allison Mendez, Alexandra Benjamin, Jasper Caboan, and Peter Caboan. So I'm going to turn it over to the teachers to tell us a little bit about ASL, American Sign Language, and take it away.
Thank you. I'm Linda Cameron. This is my 10th year here at the high school teaching ASL. And
hi, I'm Jessica McAllister. This is my first year teaching here, and I'm teaching 3 classes of sign language and 2 of Spanish.
And Jessica,
welcome back. She's
Thank
a
you.
Foxborough High School graduate.
Oh.
Thank you.
Jessica went through our ASL program. Okay. And I teach the year 1 classes, the year 3 class, and the independent study students. So we're going to have the students tell you a little bit about what they're doing in the program. These are our ASL 2 students, our ASL 3 students, and our independent study students. And they're going to tell you a little bit about what they do in the class and how we take the classroom learning outside into the community, some of the projects that they're doing in the community. Okay, ladies?
During the fall season for the football games, every Friday night, the ASL 3 class can volunteer to sign the national anthem at all the football games. Not only that, at every pep rally, which is usually about 3 a year, we stand up in front of our whole high school and we sign the Pledge of Allegiance and the national anthem.
Ladies?
We would also go down to the Taylor School. This year we went for Halloween and we started like Halloween books. And it was fun because the little kids they would ask questions. They were really curious and really interested in how we signed and stuff. And, yeah.
We also returned to the Taylor for
a holiday concert with the surrounding seniors. And it was a great experience because we got to sign and singing holiday songs like with the senior citizens, and
That's always
it was great.
That's wonderful. This is what happens when you tell them in advance where the TV is and where they can see themselves.
I was going to say.
It's all good. It's all good
Ladies,
spirit.
take a breath. It's okay. Just take a breath. It's all right. You're doing great.
Next.
About a month ago, maybe, we went to the UMass Amherst football game, and all their home games are now held at Gillette, and we were honored to be invited to go, and we signed the national anthem once again. In the spring, we're hoping to be returning back to Gillette to sign at the Revolution soccer games. We also did that last year as well, so we're hoping to return again.
And graduation.
Yes,
You
and
always do
graduation. We do
graduation.
graduation as well. Another thing we do in the year 3 class is we research deaf artists, and this is a painting by Ann Silver, and we kind of just recreated it. And those are clay hands that we also made representing the Sign for America, and some CBAT projects we actually got to elaborate the American Sign Language in another class. And along with doing the artwork, we of course do the PSAs, and I actually got to record all the students recording or signing a song called Respect that Ms. Cameron is going to have me finish editing and be put on the school website for everyone to see it.
Excellent.
We recently went on a field trip to the Braintree Mall with the Duxbury ASL 3 classes, and it was like a 2-part field trip where the first part of it is for us to see if we could buy some things, go to the stores and try to get people to understand what we were doing and figure out ways to be able to communicate with them. And the other part is to like understand and see how the people like treated us, like how they treat other deaf people in the deaf community. So it was a great experience to see what it's like to be able to hear what they're saying and their opinions. And it was interesting.
Could you?
Because we're not allowed to talk all day. It was a silent day, and it was pretty fun.
So it's almost like going to another country or having people try to understand you.
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
Would we be putting you on the spot if we asked you what some of your observations were from that experience? Because that sounds really interesting.
Well, everyone kind of had their different experiences. I noticed that some places I went like for lunch, some people really tried to help and figure out easy ways to communicate by like giving us a pen and a paper, and others were not so willing to help and not so accepting.
Not just from my personal experiences, but from others that went with us on the trip. We would get like discounts and stuff on some of our products because they thought that we were deaf, which it was, I mean, I guess it was like kind of nice for us, but in a way it was kind of like discriminating against the deaf culture in their community because they want to be treated just as equally as anyone else. So, so like she said, like some of the comments and like just them trying to understand us and how anybody else who's deaf, like what they have to go through every day. It was kind of sad almost, but it was a fun experience to experience it, so.
It's an awareness level.
Also, I work at the YMCA in Foxborough. I teach swim lessons, some of them with deaf children, which has been really fun. I've learned a lot of things from those kids. And my boss actually used to work at a school for the deaf, and we had a birthday party recently with, it was like 50 deaf people, and she actually asked me to go and be an interpreter because some of our other lifeguards and stuff, they don't know sign language, so I helped interpret for them. And there's a woman that I work with, her name is Tabby. She actually recently has talked to me about possibly working at a deaf summer camp this year. So
Oh, how exciting.
I don't know much details about it, but it should be a great opportunity.
Exciting.
Last year at ASL 2, one of the projects we did was we worked with Miss Timmis's Spanish class, and we went down to an elementary school and we signed like this vegetable song. And it was, yeah, Spanish at ASL, like Spanish sang in Spanish and sign language signed. And it was really fun to do and a great experience. I learned a lot.
Dress up in costumes.
Yeah, we dressed up in costumes.
Like fruit and
Vegetables,
vegetable
you mean?
costumes?
Yeah, like like I dressed up as a piece of broccoli. Like,
And I was a watermelon, and we danced around and stuff, so it was cool.
I had the privilege one year to go to the borough school and watch your classes perform, and then the students sat down with smaller groups of the elementary school students and taught them how to sign a couple of the Christmas carols themselves.
we did that last year. We taught younger kids how to sign. They loved it. They thought it was like the coolest
I mean,
thing ever.
it was great to observe that.
It really helps younger kids to maybe develop an interest in it, and when they do, aren't really exposed to it, may not know anything about it. So if they develop an early interest, maybe they'll be interested when they get to high school, so. it's
A
great
lot of the
experience.
younger students told me that they can't wait to get to high school to take it.
All of you are inspiring. You're inspiring to us, and you're inspiring to these younger students as well, so.
Well, I'm an independent study student for the American Sign Language Year 3 class, and I've been taking sign language since my freshman year. And it gives me the opportunity to be a part of the class again, but also to help other students who are maybe struggling in a different year class. Like when I have a study, or even when I have sign language on my schedule, I can go down to ACT Lab and help other kids who need like extra tutoring and can just help them like work through it. Another thing is we create, once Miss Cameron or they teach a lesson, we can record the vocab words and put them on Emoto so they can have full access to them if they need extra like help outside of school. And I recently just got into University of Southern Maine for the American Sign Language program.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you.
That's great.
Me and another girl also got the opportunity last week to go down to the borough and meet with a couple people from the special education program along with a parent, and we're helping them communicate with not a deaf child, but he has Down syndrome, and it was really kind of just gave me a great feeling to know that I can work with adults along with helping them communicate with their children. So I'm kind of looking forward to going back there and doing that again.
That's great. Wow.
Ms. Cameron, would you share with us how a lesson has been created for you out of the most recent communication debacle that happened in South Africa that was seen worldwide?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
This has become a lesson for her.
Yes. We have a videotape of the gentleman with a signing, as he says, signing. And we have a copy of it. Alex actually made a copy for us, and she has loaded on Moto for us. We're going to take the students through the lesson with him signing it and break it down as to how you know a person is or is not signing for real. And this is what they need to be looking for example, the facial expressions and the body language, and not necessarily all of the signs, but everything else that goes into sign language. So we have a videotape of that, and we will create a lesson out of that, and thanks to Alex for finding that and uploading it for us.
Great idea. Just
Isn't
to
that
have unexpected raw material, I'm going to call it, we're learning in school. Anybody else? So you have a lot of audience members here in support, so good for you guys.
I'll make a comment. We always like having students come and tell us what you're learning and share with us some of your experiences. And we know not everyone gets to participate in the same activities at school. So it's always interesting to us to hear some of the different activities. And I think we all feel very proud of you guys and what you're learning. So keep it up and congratulations.
Thank you.
And it's because of kids like you that the program is expanding and the demand is higher. So keep up the good ambassador work.
Well, it was the great teacher that created this. I mean, she came and she was going to have a couple of year 2 classes and begin some more year 1 classes.
I'm trying to figure out who was here before, because I know students who took it
But it was Miss Cameron that did that, and we have now had to expand the program to hire a second teacher.
That's right.
Could I?
And,
Oh, please,
When
you
you
want to
do-
get to the microphone though, just so?
I just want to ask what motivates some of the students to join this. It's a very deliberate, hard body of knowledge to learn. But what motivated some of you, maybe ladies, fellas, to jump into this program? It's a lot of work.
Gentlemen, we haven't heard much from you, so.
Well, my sisters attended Foxborough High, and although they didn't take sign language, they would, like, I would go to some of the pep rallies or the games, and I would see people signing, and I honestly wasn't never very good at any other language. And so especially when I was at the Ahern Middle School, and when you enter the 8th grade at the end of the year, the ASL 3 will do a nice little kind of like musical skit, which we'll be doing again this year. And that's what really introduced me into it and got me interested, how you don't have to verbally speak to talk to someone. And I think it's really cool to just use your hands, and like with like the facials and stuff, that's like our adjectives. Like we don't have adjectives in sign language. Your body movement like can tell whether you're one person or another person, they're having a conversation. So it's just really interesting that we're one of the very few high schools to even have this opportunity. And so that's what brought me to it.
So you may not be aware, but ASL counts as the world language requirement for high school students. So they don't have to take what you think of as a traditional world language, because this does count as the graduation requirement, because it is a language.
absolutely.
I think it's really a great option for students.
Debbie, I have one thought. I guess I'll go to the microphone. This is really timely. It's funny. My 6th grade son was just saying the other day that's what he wanted to do for world language when he gets to high school. So it's great to hear what you have to say, and it's more intensive a program than I was aware of. So I think it's fabulous. I know, skipping ahead, we're going to talk about enrichment and challenge later in this meeting, but hearing their comments on their visits to the Taylor and the Burl and the IGO, I wonder if there's an opportunity there to involve our high school students and our younger elementary school students in sort of a shorter term enrichment program.
there's a good
Something
idea.
to think about for the future, because it sounds like they enjoyed it, and that the younger students are very interested in perhaps learning a little bit of sign language themselves. So maybe we can think about that later. But thank you for coming. This is really great.
Thank you.
Great to hear about.
Anybody else?
No?
I think it's
Goodbye. Wave,
Ms. Frazier,
let's
any
sign
comments?
That's it. It's like a salute.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
I think this is really important because you don't realize how this program extends out into the community the way it does. I
Yeah.
didn't know about some of these things. I
didn't
didn't
either.
know that the participation in some of the sporting events and even the spring musical that you're going to be participating in at the Ahern.
I didn't know that the independent study that you went to the before and after care program.
I
as
just
like
wanted
an
to
enrichment.
add one thing.
great.
A lot of kids will say, "Oh, I'll take sign language because it's easy." They'll say, "Oh, I'm just gonna take it to get out of Spanish and French, and it'll be fun. It'll be an easy." It's not easy. I struggled my freshman year. Well, not like
Yeah.
F, but I kind of had my bumps through the roads freshman year, and as I was intrigued more, it got easier for me.
I agree with her too, and honestly, if there was ever a chance, I mean, I don't know if there is, but it would be great to have this language as part of maybe the middle school when we do really start to learn our other languages, because if I had the opportunity, I would definitely take it earlier on, be more experienced, because I also plan on doing it as a career, add more, experience just to my college application and just for furthermore in a professional career. So it would just be really nice to see that if it was possible.
Great to hear.
And I love that you're doing the flip classroom videos. I love that whole model is, as you know, near and dear to my heart. So what a great use of somebody doing independent study to broaden her horizons, but also help everyone else, so. I don't know if you have
Thank you so
anything
much
to
for
add, Ms.
coming.
Frazier, our department head back there, hiding, just smiling away at all of you, which is pretty wonderful. All right.
Thank you all for coming
Thank
this
you all.
evening.
Keep up the good work. Really great to learn more. I wish I know how to say you're welcome.
You're welcome.
Oh, I'm challenged in several languages, but I can't even hack away in this one, as I say.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Great job.
Thank you.
It's interesting what they do.
Maybe Mr. Yukna can give the budget discussion and sign.
Yes. I think he was preparing all day, actually, to do exactly that.
And that's a good segue. That's where we're moving into our preliminary discussion of proposed FY15 budget. Ms. Spinelli and Mr. Yukna.
Yes, so as you know, in December, we present the preliminary budget, which is our earliest version of the budget for presentation at the committee level. And in our view, it's a great opportunity for the committee to look at some different areas that you might like us to come back with more information about. And we will continue the budget discussion on January 6th. And then if need be, on occasion, we schedule a second meeting in January so that you're fully prepared to vote on the budget at the end of January, which I believe is Monday the 27th this year. So this is your opportunity to ask whatever it is you'd like us to come back more with. We already have one area we know we'd like to come back with more specific information about for you to consider, and that's one of our staffing additions we'll get to in a minute. But this is, I think, a good round to see. And before we forget, we would like to thank our budget subcommittee members, Bruce Gardner, Steve Uden. Bill and I met with them individually to talk about our preliminary budget, and that was really helpful for us to consider everything. I don't know if you want to.
Joe, would you like to
I
come?
know the other year for the budget, I was wondering, they usually do like a finalization of March, but we didn't do that last year because you guys were good with after the public hearing in January.
That's usually what happens, is once they vote at the end of January, then that's the vote.
Yeah, what happened the other years when I know one year they used to do back when all the administrators used to come, but they don't do that anymore. Why is that?
No, this is the same, it's the same process, but who's required to be at the meetings might have changed a little bit, but we meet with principals. I see Mrs. Abrams is here.
Someone come present their budget, like all the principals, the
Oh, I don't know.
coordinators.
That might have been a while ago, I don't know. We don't do that anymore.
They feed that to Mr. Yukna and Mrs. Spinelli now, Joe,
Right.
separately, not in this meeting, but that still goes
Right.
to, yeah.
You guys, why do you guys used to have to do like an update, like say in March, like after the?
Well, on a very rare occasion, if the revenue picture looks different in town, they may need to meet later and reconsider it, but that's rare. So usually when the
But
committees.
last year you guys were pretty good.
Thank you.
Well, that compliments to the committee.
Sorry, it's just going to take a second.
Okay, sure.
If we ever need a committee historian, I have a nominee.
Let me
Yes.
tell you, he could tell you everything that he remembers doing. He's got a better memory than probably all of us put together, so I appreciate that.
Thank you for that input.
Thank you,
We
Joe.
appreciate it.
Well, okay. So what we'd like to do tonight is a few things. You have 3 pieces in your packet, a preliminary PowerPoint, so we're going to go over kind of the broad spectrum of how we approach the budget, and then I'll do that section, then Bill's going to present some of the very specific staffing shifts. Assume everybody has everything at this point in front of them. And then you have the budget detail that's really for the committee to, if there's a specific area you'd like us to invest, but we don't present all of that because we'd be here till quite a while. So the FY15 preliminary budget on behalf of the school committee. And we're waiting to be welcomed on the PowerPoint. So while we're doing that, I'll just go over the timeline. Bill and I began meeting in October with joint town and school administrative leadership meetings, and that's with the acting town manager and the town finance director to frame the budget process, to find out what their thoughts were early on about how the budget looks and what they anticipate the revenue forecast would be. In November, as you recall, there was a joint meeting with the school committee and the Board of Selectmen to review the revenue forecast in a formal venue. In December, on December 13th, all of the school budget requests, a preliminary request was due to the town finance director. That was just last week. And then this week is the public presentation tonight of our preliminary budget for discussion at tonight's meeting. On January 27th, the school committee will conduct their public review and vote on the recommended school budget. on February 12th, the school committee will meet with the advisory committee to review their school budget presentation and request. And in May, the annual town meeting is when all the budgets are approved. So that's our timeline. In between, Bill and I will also be reaching out to our town finance, our AdCom representatives to see if they would like to come in for a smaller meeting to go over this after tonight. So we start with our preliminary, and then we'll get questions from whoever might have questions. Okay. As you can see, it just takes a little bit of time for us to sometimes be welcomed into our internet access and get into that. So here we are. So before we get to the first slide that Bill's going to get to, which is our budget message, I think it's important to note something that is in here in implication, but we really, as an administrative team, work very hard to conscientiously plan how to improve the quality of our programs and services. We're always striving to connect with each other and with our teachers about what can we do to make things better or more efficient or more cost efficient or deliver a better quality of program to our students. So we conscientiously plan for those things and talk about them actively at our twice-a-month administrative meetings, and it does all culminate in the budget requests that come to us at this time of year. Some of the things I do want to note that we are improving our quality of programs and services, you won't see in the budget. So let me give you an example of what that is before we get to the formal. So we've talked a lot about science, technology, engineering, and math, which we call STEM subjects, and a STEM growth plan, which you know is part of my personal superintendent goals. And when you see on January 6th, at the same time that you're continuing a discussion, the high school folks will be here for the program of studies, and you'll see a high school engineering, I'm going to call it re-engineering course because we had one before. We've re-engineered the engineering program, and you will see that in the program of studies, but you won't see it in this budget because if there are improvements that we can make that are cost neutral, which is to have that teacher who used to teach a different course move over and teach the engineering course, which is our plan, then you won't see it in the budget. So we do look for cost neutral solutions first and cost neutral efficiencies first. You won't also see that we plan to add 2 sections of financial literacy, which is an elective in the business department, that we think we're able to reallocate a staff member teaching another course to teach the 2 sections of financial literacy, which is a half-year elective that students can take because there's a lot of interest in that. And right now what happens with those is we cap them at the number of students, so we'd like to open that up to more. So we will be making improvements to our STEM opportunities, but you wouldn't necessarily see it highlighted in here. Another thing that you won't see highlighted in here is that we've had ongoing discussions that will continue through the next two or 3 months about our elementary special education programs and services, just as we do often, although I would say we're doing it with a little more focus this time. We're reviewing how we deliver special education programs and services at the elementary level. Has our population shifted? What our students' needs and how do we build the programs around that. But all of that is also going to be cost neutral. So at some point when the special education administrator is here later in the spring about updates for special education, we'll present it there. But if we do decide to shift things around or approach something a little bit differently, it's cost neutral, so you wouldn't see that in the budget. So I think that's a good point to make, is that we do try to look first to cost neutral or budget neutral plans or ways to improve our programs and services. Okay, so here's our FY15 budget message. Some key points. We want to maintain the same high level of educational services to students and improve them if we can, while working within the municipal funding and the town budget framework. And every year we highlight how important that is, and that really does work well for us. And I don't think we can say it often enough that we have a very good relationship with the town finance folks, and to meet with them in an ongoing way and really find out what's happening. We have great discussions. That really does work very well, that we know it's our obligation to work within their framework, and the ongoing communication really helps us do that. So we want to thank our town side partners. And so our budget is also consistent with the historical approach of the town and the commitment to education that the town has always demonstrated. As always, our budget reflects a match to our school strategic plan priorities and to the school committee's district priorities as well. And those are listed here. We do, however, want to move the district's academic and strategic initiatives forward. So one of the things you'll see when Bill gets to the very detailed list of the ins and outs and staff shifting is that you will see that we have added, for discussion purposes, another wellness position to the high school. So wellness includes health and physical education, but this would be really for physical education. We'll maintain our health classes freshman and sophomore years. There is a state requirement that students have 4 years of physical education. We currently require 2. So at some point, the state does expect us to make progress toward meeting that guideline. So we have in there an additional wellness teacher so that sophomores moving forward would have a half year of wellness as well. You'll see that in there. So while this budget does address several of our challenges, it would never address all of them, but I think we've done a good job prioritizing. So when we come back in January, we typically bring you new information or expanded information that you've requested tonight about certain areas of the budget, and we also bring what we call our wish list, for lack of, other things, which you'll see definitely hinted at in here, but we definitely come back with a purposeful discussion for you as to other things we're interested in to see what the will of the committee would be. So, next slide, what's new in the school budget? As you can see in the second, doesn't want to move down. Doesn't want to move down at all. Okay. The second bullet is what I was just discussing. The first bullet, we've had on our wish list for the last couple of years an ongoing discussion about the assistant principal situation at the middle school. As you know, we have 2 assistant principals at the high school. We have 1.6 at the middle school. And given the size of the population at the middle school and the fact that there are needs of middle school students there, that in order to, we feel, structure the middle school the way it should be structured, that we need 2 full-time assistant principals. So there are ongoing needs of students that occur after the first 6/10 of the day. There are also increasing demands in the educator evaluation system, which, as you know, we implemented fully last year, and to not have a second full-time assistant principal, that definitely shifts the load elsewhere, and there's a lot of demand there. So that's why Ms. Abrams is here. If you have questions for her tonight about that, feel free to ask. She will be available to answer your questions, to ask them. So, the other thing you see is that we have an additional custodian for the Hearn Middle School. Bill can speak to it when he gets there later, to his point in the PowerPoint, but it's pretty simple. The size of the 2 schools is very similar. The high school has 5, the middle school has 4, and there are things that they can't get to with only limited time in the classroom. So we believe in maintaining our facilities, and it's time. And other than that, the expense adjustments to other accounts for service contracts, supply costs, maintenance costs, that we have kept those. We stopped the idea of just adding a certain percentage, knowing that there is costs go up, and we have what we call it targeted expense adjustments. So if we have expenses in a certain area that we know are going up, like service contracts, like subscriptions to an online solution, then we'll have accounted for that. If there are other areas that we feel that we can hold at the current level, textbook adoption, for example, then we will. So we do have increased costs for professional development, and 2 things I'd like to highlight. Advanced placement training does cost, and it's absolutely critical as we expand AP to make sure that we have teachers that are trained in providing AP coursework. So we want to acknowledge that. And the high school professional development line, you'll see a little bit later on, has increased. So that's a pretty easy one to explain. We've got the middle school has $5,000 a year for the professional development of the principal, 2 assistant principals, and all the teachers in the building. It doesn't seem like much now, does it? The high school has exactly the same amount, but they have to account for the principal, the 2 assistant principals, all of the department heads, and the teachers if they want to go to a targeted workshop for them. It's never been enough, and so every single year for probably eternity, we have to shift money from either the district-wide professional development line, which is not that much either, to the high school. So in Bill's approach, which is to be transparent about where the money is being spent in the budget, that we have to really up that to $9,000, or too many adults in key leadership positions as well as the teachers, to say that we could possibly account for that with $5,000. You'll see when Bill gets to the specifics about the special education staffing that we have lots of ins and outs, as we call it, with special education staffing, which shifts according to the needs of the students and often mid-year. And you'll see that there are a lot of swaps that we may need a position here, we may need an educational assistant for a student there, but the net result is 1.6, and that pretty much, when you're not talking about swapping, is that we increased the elementary facilitator from 0.5 to a full-time position, so that's 0.5 of that. We had to add a full-time educational assistant for a one-to-one situation with a student, so now we're up to 1.5. And then the speech and language pathologist used to be 0.9, and she retired. And that's a very old way. It has to do with her retirement. She never, it was a detriment to her to go to full-time because she had been at 0.9 for so many years. But when you go to replace that, it doesn't make sense to keep 0.9 FTEs around. So we advertise for full-time. So that's the additional 0.1. Minor adjustments for other things that you see there, which Bill will get to. So as always, there are things that this budget will not meet, and some of those things, just to highlight a few, and we'll get to this more in January with our wish list, is we are going to need additional computers to address the national park exams that are coming in. We talk about this all the time. We really wonder how any school district is going to meet the requirements of park. We probably are in better shape than many, if not most, and we still feel like we're going to be very challenged by it, but that could be discussed under capital improvement. I'll skip because I don't want to read everything that's on here, but we've talked for the last couple of years at this table about a third elementary math specialist, because up until 2 years ago, we had one math specialist for 3 schools, a lot of traveling involved. Then with the support of this committee, we added a second one, so now we have 2 for 3 schools, and ideally, we'd like to have 1 for each elementary school. It really isn't exorbitant to have 1 person in each school that not only can serve students on any level of achievement in mathematics, but can also help the teachers with math content and how they approach mathematical instruction. And then new on our list of things that we would like to expand, but it's not met in this budget, is that idea of adding business education, because those courses are very popular. They're real world. They're almost becoming, I would call it, necessary to operate effectively in the real world when you graduate. Mm-hmm. So those courses, I think, really are speaking to being college and career and life ready, I would say. And then a new thing we're thinking about is, what are the needs of students for social workers? We have social workers in the district. Do we need a little bit of an increase of 0.5 in that? We started that discussion. And then other things that you've seen on our list before, just to keep it on the forefront, we still have tuition-based kindergarten. And there are lots of requirements coming out of the Department of Education that we do try to keep up with, but they seem to be coming a little bit more rapidly.
Are we seeing a greater need of greater students requiring special services that a social worker would then oversee? I guess that's one of the things that I would want to know about what those numbers might reflect.
We are, because I think nationally and maybe even worldwide, you're seeing more students that have mental health issues. Mm-hmm. They could be psychological, social, emotional adjustment, and that, I think, is not something unique, certainly, to hear. And I think it's also an awareness on our part that really does affect their ability to learn in much more of a way than, say, in my generation, people had any idea or understood how important that was. That if you're not socially, emotionally, mental health healthy, then you can't really devote all of your efforts to your learning. And that's really what we're trying to do, is make sure that we meet all the needs of the child so that they can, take advantage of learning in an optimal way. So that's something we've been talking about, whether we need more services in that area.
Okay, thank you.
And then last, the famous pie chart. So about 59% of our budget is spent on instruction, which is very consistent with other years. About 24% is spent on special education, 7% on plant operations, 3% on central administration, 3% on transportation, 2% on technology, and 2% on athletics. And those numbers really, if they shift 1% in any of those pieces of the pie, it would be unusual, because they really stay pretty much the same.
These are actually identical to last year.
Okay, great.
I'll turn it over to Bill to go through some more specifics. So that was kind of a general preview of the things that we were thinking about and what our approach was.
Debbie, can I just ask a couple questions on the pie chart?
Sure.
So, obviously, we're a labor cost-intensive organization from a budget standpoint.
Yes.
So, in your pie chart, the labor is spread across all of these categories?
Yes.
Okay, it'd be interesting.
Yes, so transportation, for example, does include salary.
Yep.
Does include,
It does.
yes.
There's not a lot we can do.
Athletics, the same. I'm sorry, athletics, yeah, okay.
There's not a lot we can do about, minimizing labor costs because we are labor intensive, other than, of
Yes.
course, negotiate smart contracts and that sort of thing.
Yes.
But just thinking out loud, it'd be interesting to see what % of these budgets, the labor is and what % is, just as, I don't know if that would tell us anything, but it might be interesting. The other observation I have, just looking at the pie chart, is technology being only 2% of our total allocation. Knowing how important that's becoming, that strikes me as being a low number. I mean, it'd be interesting to maybe benchmark other districts. I suspect they're all struggling to fund enough technology. But if you say, in this technological world we live in, only 2% of our budget goes to that, it does justify, I think, your comments earlier that technology costs are increasing and we need to look at that, and there are some things we could have put in the budget that aren't there. So those are two things that I just...
That's true, because actually, one of the things that you might see on the wish, I just didn't mention it. The third technology integration specialist, right now we have one for the 3 elementary schools. We're still actually searching for the second one for the middle and high school. And eventually, we'd like to have one for the elementary schools, one for the middle school, one at the high school. So that's a future goal that we're also trying to get to. And that's in that area.
To Bruce's point, and I think we're all in agreement, and we met earlier about this with our separate meeting that we had, Bruce and you and I, on separate occasions. I know this is an overview presentation tonight, so we don't need to drill into all the nitty-gritty, but the recurring costs are probably on the horizon going to be more of increasing, because the technology that we will have, or may adopt, are going to come with licensing, all those things. Xenon light bulbs that are almost obscene in their costs, for just the replacement of a light bulb, $200, something like that. And this technology spreads across all the subject matters, so it's not just limited to one room with one body of study. So I would love to be able to help with that if we could, as a school committee member, help the team with that and the technology and tools that the staff needs and training as well.
Well,
to bump that up.
Help is always appreciated. I think one of the things too that I want to remind people, the reason it might not look as high of a percentage, don't forget the most expensive part of technology goes through capital. So all of the things we purchase in capital are not going to be reflected here. If you were to take everything together and redo the pie, you would see a much bigger percentage. So, but that's not the way it is prepared.
Yeah.
So
That's a good.
because the things you see, more interactive whiteboards, the computer replacement, the new email system we're going through, the phones, all of that stuff is under technology, and most of that, the big ticket items, goes through capital. So
Thank you.
that's why we don't
Yeah.
worry as much about the 2% here, because this is pretty much ongoing.
This is really your labor and your
Right.
licensing fees. This is
Right.
really what's in
That's
here.
all it is.
Yeah.
Well, it's not saying all it is.
To your point, though, the percentage of labor to expense is 84.3% is labor in this budget. So, it is very hard to change the needle much depending on how you deal with your labor contract. So we think we did very well last year in negotiating through, and you were on that, you saw the issues we faced there. But I think the general approach is that's how much of the budget just moves with bringing forward our salaries and the contractual issues.
And I think to see that our percentages didn't change even after negotiating with all of our associations is a good note at this time and place, because sometimes you'll see big shifts based on that, and which means something happened in the process that affected other things. So I think the fact that we got through all of those negotiations and we still see the same budget allocations is a sign of our district being fairly stable in how we approach the budget and how we move forward.
Yep, that's a key underlying message within our budget, I agree. We're lucky.
Thank you, Debbie.
Are you going to move
Thanks,
on
Bill.
to this,
Yes.
though? Okay. The requests?
So as far as the general basis, as Deb gave you some of the highlights, but in going through the budget, it was to maintain our current level of offerings or expand them, continue curriculum review cycles, which we do on a 5-year basis for most of the groupings, maintain our current class sizes. And when we say that, we actually go through with the principals what their class sizes are, and that's where we make some of these adjustments, as Deb said earlier, relative to adding some business classes and some engineering classes and stuff like that. We are going to use, with the slight decreases we've had in population, we adjust for that by using those bodies in areas that people have asked us to add enrichment programs and other programs to the system. So class size is important to us, but it's also monitoring those class sizes and how you can reuse those resources when it's working for you.
And that is actually how we came up with the plan for engineering and financial literacy. So we look at class sizes in a particular department, and we've got great people. Principal Diana Spackler said we can do this by reallocating some of this. So that's why not all of our solutions or movements you'll see in here, or improvements, I should say.
Meaning that they're not going to result in dollar sign changes.
Right. So you
Right.
wouldn't see it in here because
Right.
that's our first question when we're looking at class sizes. What are we trying to accomplish at that level? And let's look at our class sizes and everything else and say, can we accomplish this in a cost-neutral fashion? That's always the first question.
I think that's important. I'm glad you brought that up, Debbie, especially at the onset of this presentation, because I think oftentimes when people hear about new initiatives, the immediate response is, how much is it costing us? So, but I think that this is something that's really been prevalent here in that sense of looking at the resources that we have within the district and making those changes and movement so that it doesn't create an increase in costs.
Exactly.
And you've been great at that, and I know your previous successor.
Yeah.
your-
That's
am I
our
saying that
role.
right? The
Predecessor.
Predecessor, there you
Thank you. Right, predecessor did the same thing. So
Yeah.
I think that's
Exactly.
been the philosophy of.
And those are the two things
yes.
I'm most excited about is the new engineering course
Yes.
and more financial
Right.
literacy, and they're not even in here, so that's
Right.
good.
great.
So I'm sorry, I don't want to distract you, but go ahead. Just want to highlight that.
Obviously, we have to look at the educational program for the special needs side of the house as well. And we go through the entire program, whether it's in district or out of district, transportation, anything that has to affect that program, and make sure that we're accounting for it. Obviously, there is a little bit of estimating that has to happen in that area because you don't know all the children who haven't shown up yet. And so we've done very well with that over the years, and I think consistently we've been able to manage that budget. And use the circuit breaker and a couple of the other funds that we have available to us when we do have an issue. So we fortunately have a setup that works well. As Deb said earlier, as far as the supplies, you're going to see that there's really, expense-wise, very few changes throughout the budget, except in specific areas we have issues with. Again, as far as the process, It's basically to go through every single program within every single school and every building and make sure that we shake that out. When we're going through this, one of the things is we're always trying to estimate number of retirees. At this point in the year, we don't know anything. But as you know, the town has had a consistent approach where basically, no matter what our salary budget is, they're assuming we're going to have $125,000 in savings. That usually works out to between 4 and 5 retirements when you take what the new person replacement cost will be versus the person retiring. So obviously, if we have less than that, we have a little bit of windfall. If we have more than, if we have less, we have a problem. If we have more than that, we have a little bit of a windfall. Last
If you
year,
have less than that, the summer's a little bit more, the hiring process in the summer, I pay a little closer attention to.
and the other side of that is it also depends on the area. Losing a math teacher, which is a highly sought after profession, is you're going to pay more than the lowest step because you're not going to find typically somebody on the lower step. But you might be lucky enough in another area to be able to gain that difference. So it's not always that 5 works. Sometimes you actually you need 6 or 7 just to get to that number and be appropriate on it. And one of the other issues we have to deal with, as you know, our budget's an all-in budget, which means that we include every expense that the district has, and then we take off what we bring in for grant money and revolving money. There has been a steady downward trend on the grant side, especially on the federal side. 2 of our grants alone came in this year about $30,000 less than what we had last year. 1 grant went away. So even though we're budgeting for these things, we have to be able to make those up during the year as we go through. May mean that we use a little bit more dependency on our revolving accounts, which has kind of pulled those down quicker, and left us in a little bit less of a healthy position on those to be able to maneuver as we move forward. But there is no way of knowing, because the grant application process doesn't even happen until, in many cases,
Now
the
it's
summertime,
July.
and sometimes we don't get the answers to the beginning of fall. So for the next year, which we're already in at that point.
Everything has changed. It used to be June grant submission, end of July, beginning of August notification. Now, nothing comes to us until sometimes the end of July.
Right.
And we don't know until the beginning of September. So we're making Amy pony up anything. It's a difference. And she writes all the grants up in special ed. We said whatever reduction it is, you're personally responsible.
Have a good vacation.
Oh, I'm sorry?
May I ask Bill a question?
Oh, yeah. Oh, sure, go ahead.
Thanks. So, yeah, bummer, right? Our grants are going down, right? And then we have Park looming behind us as an 800-pound gorilla telling us to buy hardware, software, and extended licensing fees. Where in the horizon, I ask clinically, not any other way, is there Park money on our horizon
No.
for the universe?
0.
This was brought up in the last managers meeting that I went to for business managers, and actually we had the DOE there answering questions, and one of the biggest complaints that my group had was that what Park is going to push down on us, and we have about 1,250 computers throughout the district. We have 2,700 students. If you have to do the testing the way they want the testing done, we probably need at this point about 300 to 400 more computers to make that work. Okay, so it's a very troublesome thing to think that all of a sudden a district who is obviously maintaining equipment, because that's number one, is to keep the 1,200 we have going, but now to have to add on top of that more than we actually replaced in a given year.
And we're in
to make
decent
this work.
shape for equipment
Right.
compared to some others.
Right.
Right, so we're well managed, but and then
This
we
is- this
still
is just
need,
another one
we
of the
need
state,
labor. We still need labor to help
state
manage.
mandates unfunded.
Right.
We still need people to help us maintain it, cross-educate professionals and all that.
Yeah, and I think the issue here really is going to come down, they're trying this, I guess, this year with some of it being done paper-wise and some of it being done system-wise. And I think that the system side of it's going to show the weaknesses in most districts that have to do it, because, you can do, like, even look at our Hearn, we have 7 computer labs in that building. It's not enough. And if that's the case, first of all, we don't have more room to put more computer labs in, so it means that, again, just from a practical point of view, the options are going to be something that makes Mrs. Abrams happy, but it's going to be to have carts, where computers are on carts that you can move into rooms and fully make a room that's not normally a computer lab into a computer lab. But even the setup for the Park exam is basically where desks can't be side by side, so most of our computer labs are set up that way. They're supposed to be back to back. Kids can't be next. There's just going to be a lot of issues relative to that. We're trying to address what we can address based on what we know today.
But that
the
might
reality
change,
is-
right?
Excuse me?
That might change, right?
It seems to change
Well,
every year, so.
Yeah.
We think it might, but they're not saying anything. We just don't see how this is all going to roll out.
But the good thing is, obviously, this isn't just Foxborough. This
No.
is statewide
Right,
and
right.
nationwide, and so.
And the more that administrators advocate for their school districts, like you have done, you will all have done,
The
the more.
Superintendent Association is very active in trying to advocate and represent the realities of all of the required mandates. I don't know if there's any movement yet, but they're actively working toward trying to communicate the reality on the ground of all the ideas that are.
On the other hand, Park's not all bad, right? I mean,
No.
I'm not saying
driving
it's bad,
college
I'm
and
just
career
saying we need
readiness is a good
equip-
thing, right?
We
So-
need to be
No,
equipped.
it is,
and
it's not. It's just the logistics of
Yeah.
it that are
Yeah.
near impossible.
Well, it does put a district in a position of having to have good management and good discipline and good foresight and do the best we can, and we're fortunate that we have. I think we're doing, but good point, good concern looming on the horizon.
Well, if the superintendent's committee, the superintendent's organization is lobbying, I'm sure gonna learn more about what the school committee organizations are doing to lobby this, because
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
Well, they usually work
Doesn't make
hand
me
in hand,
smile.
Superintendent
Yeah.
Association and the school
Yeah.
committee.
It's the
so-
big discussion
Right.
going on in the last year or
Mhm.
so.
Thank you. Sorry to digress a little bit there, sorry.
It's part of what we have to look at when we look at these budgets as we go
Right.
through them. The budget request that we're pushing forward, the town portion of the funding is $30,467,585. It's an increase of $1,059,108, or 3.6%. As we stated already, 84% of that is relative to labor cost. The COLA increase that was negotiated was a 2% for this year. So what you end up with is a 2% on the salaries and obviously steps and lanes, as well as a few other minor contractual things that were done, longevity, sick pay, and a few other things that were tweaked a little bit. So it's not as high as it was last year as far as percentage-wise, but it's still a number that obviously, I think the town will look at with serious eyes. However, it is less than what we had originally projected to the town side by about $140,000. So in their revenue projections, they have a number that's about $140,000 higher than this. So obviously, it's going to give some leeway, within the town structure as far as that money goes as well. Here's kind of a chart that just gives you the kind of the track record here. And as I was saying, that we've kind of been in this range in the past, but the differential last year, again, the COLA increase was at 2.5%, so this is a slightly less, on the COLA side. And from the expense point of view, we had a little bit more last year because we tried to fix a lot of the issues that we had, again, with the licensing and stuff like that, that really hadn't been accounted for and was starting to get away from us as far as being able to maintain it and pay for it.
This is always one of my favorite charts, because I really think it lets us look at how we're doing over time and how this year's increase compares to prior year increases. And as you've said, Bill, we did have a successful negotiation, which is always a balance act between taking care of our staff and managing the responsibilities to the town. And I always look forward to this chart every year. I just think it shows that each year is different, but it doesn't always go up, Even in a year where we just had to renegotiate, where our year-to-year change is down from last year to this year. And I think that's important.
Enrollments, we've had a downward trend for the last 6 or 7 years. Obviously, the FY10 was pretty close to the high year in the 2,900 range. This year, we're in on October 1st at 2,772. We have a little bit larger in the preschool. It's not a great indicator because, again, you don't see all the students until the kindergarten side. Our kindergarten is healthy compared to last year. It's a few up. So, again, a lot of this number is relative. It's not as scientific as you would think, because when you look at births in town and you do a track record, which I did, I went back about 20 years, the correlation doesn't even exist. It really has more to do with what's going on socially and economically within the town as far as new move-ins, new construction, and issues that way. And that's how the family, my neighborhood's a perfect example. All the kids had grown up and are now half the families have changed, and now it's all younger families again that are coming in. So that's really what the indicator is. Obviously, we're coming off a couple bad economic years, so you wouldn't have expected, and there wasn't much building going on in town. That's starting to change again, and we're starting to see a few good-sized projects that will come across in the near future on the town side. So we feel the numbers are going to be relatively similar for the next couple years, but again, unfortunately, when you look at everything that's even generated by the state side, the numbers are everywhere. So I've come back to doing the best based on what we have as a history of student base and who's moving forward and who's not. What we have seen is a pretty stable environment at the charter school. Again, that's supposed to be on a lottery program, so you would expect, based on the groupings that are out there. But we have seen on the high school level more of them coming back, which is in the last couple
Coming
of years.
back to us.
Coming back to the high school. Again, we offer certain programs that they don't offer because of our size, our athletics, and other things like that. So depending on music, depending on how what the kid's aptitude is and where he's really looking to go, you would expect you'll get some of that. But the last couple of years actually has been, a little bit more direct on that high school level than on any other level. The other levels seem to stay pretty consistent, so. Again, the historical trend, when you look at it from a graphing point of view, we had the highs in that 2006 range. Basically, we're going to be looking at coming back down, and I would say, based on what we're seeing with the building and the populations, we should stay pretty much in this stable environment of around the 2,700 going forward.
That's about where it was when we got there.
Staffing changes, we've done this by building, so you can kind of get an idea of what the overall changes. And one of the things that you'll see, or I'll talk you through, is that some of the changes that will show up in the budget itself are actually because we made changes during this year in order to accomplish issues, whether it was an IEP that was out there that we didn't know of last year when we were doing the budget. So we don't change the FTEs in the budget side of it. So if there was a need to change and add a half of ed assistant, as an example, on September of this year, we would have done it because obviously we have to meet the needs of the students, but the budget will still stay at what the original FTEs are. So when we go to this year, it actually looks like there's a change in FTEs, but it was something that we had to account for this year. And in this, in these cases, you're going to see in the end, most of these changes, except for the ones that Deb already highlighted to you, are ones that we had to flow into and make up the money and make up the positions as we go. So on the elementary level, actually we only had one, which was a caseload adjustment downward. So we had one less ed assistant on the kindergarten side in the IGO. The other two schools remained consistent. On the middle school, we're projecting the issue on the increase of 0.4 for the vice principal and the night custodian, no other changes within the building. And on the high school, the addition of a wellness position. The, other positions that, as we've talked about, the school to career, this is a move that you made this year. Again, it wouldn't have been in the budget last year, but so it shows up as a difference. This was actually taken from an expense line, so that's why you'll see our expenses actually are dropping.
So it actually did show up in the budget, but not as a staffing expense, so.
Right.
But now it certainly shows as a staffing increase where before it was an expense line.
We want to stay consistent so that if someone looks back at their budget to last year, they can say, well, oh, wait a second, why don't those numbers add up?
Yeah,
these numbers
exactly
do
what
add
happened.
up, and these are the changes that we make so that everybody sees where the changes actually are. So again, that's an expense side that will be moved, or has been moved already, from expense to payroll. On the music teacher side, we actually made this move in this year, again, but it wasn't done at the time, and that was the second step of making the department head a really 0.4 department head, 0.6 teacher. That's what contractually he was supposed to be doing, but he was actually in a situation where he was teaching more classes than he was supposed to, and not putting and having the time towards the department head cycle as he was supposed to.
This is the last step. This is you won't see this again, but this is the last step to make Steve Massey's schedule what it's supposed to be as a department head.
On the athletic side, we had asked the committee last year to put in a 0.5 secretary to help with all of the concussion record keeping and a lot of the other issues that were really going around within the athletic department. Obviously maintaining schedules, dealing with all the transportation issues and stuff. We got into the year and the workload was even heavier than we had anticipated, to be honest with you. And the person's been doing a great job, but has been putting in a lot of hours. So we ended up actually going up to a 0.7 instead of a 0.5 and having to pull up that small salary and change on our side to make it work. And that is, again, in place this year. And then again, on the ELL side, or the English language learners, we needed an additional portion there, so it was a 0.3 addition based on a caseload requirement. So when you look at the SPED side of it, as far as how we have to make, and again, these are I would say, all the adjustments except for the two that Deb pointed out on this are all things that happened during this year. They're all things that handled either a child moving from a grade to another grade or a caseload, or a new issue with the IEPs being generated on something that didn't exist last year at this time when we were doing the budgets. And so the net effect, as Deb said, comes down to 1.6, but it's the ins and outs, which we have every single year, that, when you think about doing a budget in November for the following year, and you really don't even know what the issues are going to be facing you, I think we do very well in getting very close goes to that component. So the salary change in the entire budget, including the offsets, it's $994,885. The expense side of it is an increase of $64,223 for the total increase of the $1,059,108. Typically what I did last year, and I think it's kind of an important thing to show out, really any expense item that's over $2,000, I kind of try to point it out to you so you can see what's going on. We have one private grant this year that has been funding something within our tech.
In one of the departments.
One of the departments that basically is going to go away, so we're going to have to make up for that $5,000.
Is that the CAD grant?
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, we just rather say, that it's that amount in a private funding is going away.
All right.
The utilities, basically, it's on our electric side. Even though we've negotiated a good contract on the overall rate, we do have a distribution fee that's gone up pretty readily over the years. Again, we've done very well holding the line on this. Actually, last year this one dropped, and we were able to do well with that, so a small increase here. The tech ed department in general, makes up a number of different groupings, but a couple of the biggest things were the in that they have the shop area component, which, material-wise, has gotten no increase in money over probably the last 7 years from what I can see. So it's very hard for them as far as doing projects. They tend to take a lot of the projects they do from one class apart to do the next class. And he's really been asking for some support there. So the biggest portion of that $7,700 is that, along with the video production department. As you know, we added that this year, but we didn't add any supplies to it. And obviously, after the first year with using everything that we've purchased, and we're fortunate enough to get through the FACES grant, now we have a little bit of a cost that we're also going to associate with that. The out-of-district tuitions for the bedside, based on what we know today, and we've tried to estimate a little bit of a load into next year as well, we still think we have about a $25,000 savings there year over year. Unfortunately, part of that's going to be chewed up by the transportation, which is very expensive when we move children around Massachusetts. One of the other unfunded mandates, but actually became funded this last year, is the homeless transportation. However, they've broadened the category, so we are finding ourselves with more and more children that are being displaced out of Foxborough but have the right to be educated here, and we have to bring them back in on a daily basis. What fortunately happened?
We have to pay for that?
Yes, we do. And fortunately, what happened last year was the state, because some of us were recording it within our state reports properly, the state actually funded any one of us who reported that right, gave us the money back. So we got about $23,000 that came back into the general fund last year. This basically would give it about $27,000, and based on our current caseload, I think it's going to be tight, but it should be pretty close. Again, if the state holds true, we may get that $27,000 back, going again to the general fund in the following year. So, there's a number of components within this budget that most people don't see that are actually monies that we bring back in, that even though we've expended them, go back into the general fund on an annual basis.
Of the town.
And this just happens to be one of them.
Yeah.
So,
The other thing
and it's
about
hundreds of
homeless-
thousands. It's not
The
like
other
a
thing
few
about
dollars.
homeless transportation that is, I think, good to note is that if a student is homeless, whether they reside elsewhere, they reside in Foxborough, and they're going back to their home district. So whichever way, if they're homeless and now live in Foxborough, or homeless, were a student at Foxborough, now are homeless in another town, usually the cost share is 50-50. So the receiving and the sending towns cost share the transportation. But if they have an individual educational plan, then the previous district pays 100% of the transportation. And that has happened to us this year. So it depends on who the student is, how much our cost burden is.
And the final component to this is, as you know, with the renovation of the turf field and putting that online, there will be some additional expenses as far as maintaining and marking that, but we also have 5.5 acres of fields that are being built behind the school that will also be used, and it's going to have, we support the town's maintenance department in, fertilization and stuff like that, so there are some monies that we need to account for. So we've added about $7,000, which we think will cover the two fields, or two complexes now. I think they're both going to be quite impressive when they're done.
5.5 acres out there.
Yeah. The revolving grants and circuit breaker, these are obviously 3 different types of outside funds that we use that are not funded by the town side. Revolving accounts are things like athletic revolving, transportation, the tuition accounts, which would be both for the full-day kindergarten.
Building rental.
A number of things. On the revolving side, the only real downtick we're going to see is going to be on the athletic side of about $10,000, and that's because the way the new MIAA is doing their scheduling, we're going to actually see less on the home game side of it, especially when it comes to the tournament component. It's still really much up in the air, and it's also the off year for the Mansfield Thanksgiving game, which is one of our biggest draws as far as the year goes. So that typically costs us, when we have that off year, about $6,000 or $7,000. So we'll be bringing, instead of $40,000, we're bringing in about $27,000 this coming year. On the grant side, as I said, we know we have a couple that are down already, and we're taking what we've seen on trends on those is that they're dropping by about 5%. On the grant side, again, the federal side seems to be hitting us more than the state side of it. And the circuit breaker, if you're not aware, but what the circuit breaker is, basically it is one of the state safety valves for the special education program. And it's basically driven off of a factor. So that if you spend over X amount of dollars on any single child, and I think this year that amount is $37,000, it goes up each year. And that means not only their out-of-district, cost, their transportation, anything you put into it. So there's a lot of accounting that has to go to make sure you really define that. They give you back a portion of that on top of it. So, what we've been very fortunate to do is first of all, I think our Sped department has been very, very good as far as controlling those numbers and understanding and reporting them, so that obviously I can pick it up and push it back through. We don't use every penny every year. We let it kind of try to keep it consistent, because some years it will be down in the 300,000 range, some years we might be up in the 500,000 range. If we obviously fluctuate that way, the town is going to see one of these things on the budget. So what you have the right is on circuit breaker is that it's a 2-year fund. So effectively what I brought in this year, which is actually for last year's expenses, I have this year and the following year to spend it. So as long as our level funding, the way we've been doing it, works, which it has, we basically are able to maintain that. And even if we had a real down year with the state, we wouldn't have to impact the town on it. I think it's no different than the way they use free cash on the town side effectively to manage the budget process and not to have the peaks and valleys. This is one of the few accounts that we have that ability with. And that's why I think Randy and company, when they look at it, understands what we're doing is to try to keep a level pool and not use the spikes up and down here. So as you can see, we're going to lose, about $20,000, a little over $23,000 in this, mostly or all from the grants and the revolving accounts. Oh, sorry.
You know what? This is the one where the key didn't come out correctly. The key is wrong. You know how it does that automatically?
Yeah.
So since we've already seen the pie chart, let's just cross out this key, since we know that central office isn't. Although it's a nice joke.
Salary increase,
Yeah. This page 14
Yeah, this
is
says
the key.
59%.
It does this automatic key thing, and you have to really watch it carefully.
Yes.
So that's not the one. That's the one
That's
prior
not
to
the one.
fixing.
As far as our next steps, partly as Deb had said before, obviously we continue to look at this with our staff, internally for any issues that may come up. We've been very fortunate over the last couple of years. We haven't had any real, shocks, but again, if we were to get an indicator as an example of children moving in that had special needs between now and the time we go to town meeting, obviously we would try to address that so that we're not all caught short on it. But, again, it's a very short window here, so there's not a lot of time for things to change. We do, as Deb said, we do sit down with Randy and Bob to go over the revenue projections for any changes that they have, as well as any changes they may have on the town side that might affect the overall budget cycle. This is your preliminary view. The next bigger one will be on the 6th, so any questions that you have in the detail. I will say that what I did for this year, which they haven't done in the past, but I was just struggling with it so hard myself that I couldn't imagine that others wouldn't. In the actual detailed budget lines, you'll see that I actually changed it to the budget side, even though the total for last year's budget equals exactly what we approved at town meeting. Every single salary line has been changed to what the actual salary line is for this year, so that when you compare what we're in today to what we're going to do tomorrow, you see the real change to each position and each grouping. Otherwise, what it was all the money was sitting down in the COLA line, the $640,000 was sitting down there. And to be honest with you, it was very difficult to look at any one of those budgets and understand, you were looking at a difference and you thought it was that the person's pay went up by that much. It didn't. It went up by half of that much type of thing.
So we're not going to see a COLA line, we're going to have this.
No, the COLA line
Right.
goes away.
Right.
The only thing that's
Okay.
sitting in the COLA line from last year's budget is the same $125,000 that then gets netted out at the bottom
For the
to
res-
match. There's a $50,000, $58,000 balance in that net amount of what we estimated last year. And when you take the other expense items that we will incur, fingerprinting, which is part of the contractual agreement that we have, stipend changes that will happen during this year, the additional course reimbursements, and a couple other things, we are going to be basically right on what we estimated in our negotiation process. So I think, considering that you're rolling the dice at the time you do it, and we, I think, had our budget in November last year completed, and we didn't
Right.
finish our negotiations until May.
Beginning of June. So,
It isn't the
awesome
easiest
job.
thing to try to guess outwards that way, but I think we did very well with it, so. And obviously by January 27th, under, your charter, you basically have to conclude your budget process.
Bill, I just had a couple of questions. A great presentation. One thing that I know in the past that we've always had access to that I think would be helpful for the January meeting are the revolving accounts.
We
Because-
actually pulled those together, and I will have those in the
Okay,
January
super.
package for you.
And the other thing I just want to clarify is the prioritization of the additional FTEs in terms of the administrative piece that you have met with your administrative team, and these have been deemed the priorities at this point in time.
Yes, we haven't, we will come back to you with them prioritized. So
Okay.
what we've done on here is included things that you should expect to see, but you don't have them in the priority order yet.
Okay, all right, that's what I just wanted to clarify,
So,
okay.
all right, so the revolving accounts, the priority list,
And I think,
and we're going to have, I think I mentioned, Mrs. Myers-Pacla, Lorraine White, the guidance, and Janelle Erskine, the wellness department head, here in January, so that you can ask more questions about that requirement and what would it look like? When is it, how would it impact student schedule, so that you can
okay.
make an informed decision about how you view that.
I was just thinking about
Sorry.
another thing. You were talking about the grants. Could we get more of a breakdown just about what those changes are? Because you said there's a reduction. I
Yeah,
know you
we-
mentioned a couple of them,
Yeah,
but
well, actually, I can give you a schedule of the last 3 years, probably would
Okay.
be a good schedule for you to see,
Yeah.
because you'll see the
just a
downward trend.
comparison.
Yeah.
I think that would be important also for people at home to understand where this request is coming.
And at this point, all we can do is, based on the prior history, predict
Right.
the decrease, because
Okay.
we've seen decreases every year for the last 8 to 10 years.
Okay.
But we don't actually know any of the allocation amounts until July.
Okay, right. Are there any other thoughts or?
Any
Okay,
questions
so-
for Sue about that while she's here? Because we thought Sue could come with questions for tonight.
Yes,
And then the high school will come on January
Okay.
6th, but I don't necessarily.
Well, I'm thinking of, when I saw that position for the middle school, I'm thinking about the number of students and what we have at the high school and how we try to make comparisons. I mean, as you did tonight too, with the request for the custodian, and certainly the student population at the middle school. I see as a greater difference between 5th and 8th grade versus the high school 9th and 12th, which again makes me think about all of the needs that student population requires, and how you've managed to meet those needs, but the request being additional support at the assistant principal level to meet those demands.
Right. So this is more a discussion about how do we set up the Ahern for the greatest chance of success meeting students' needs
Right.
outside of the classroom when it comes to administrative support, discipline, touching base with families, having meetings with students and
the
families.
Teacher evaluation process,
Teacher
which
evaluation is
huge.
huge. The number of people, the number of people to be evaluated are largest at that school.
Right.
So.
It just seems like to make that whole, to make that, from a 0.6 to a 1 point, kind of like what we did in the year past where we increased the, in the guidance, made that department from 0.8 to 1.0, so.
Well, and just as an anecdotal note, I mean, if you ever drive by the Ahern at 7 p.m. and look in the corner office, the light is off and on. So I don't think our leadership is leaving early. Yeah, just in general, Bill, I agree with Katie. Thank you. Good presentation, Deb. Obviously, Steve and I had the benefit as the subcommittee to hear this individually, and if we had major concerns, we would have voiced them prior. But, my take is just trying to compare this to past years. I think it's very prudent. You started by saying we're offering a couple of new class offerings, subject offerings that we can do without adding more teachers. You went through what I described in our subcommittee meeting as some pretty vanilla changes, is how I view them. Yes, there's some headcount increase, which is always sensitive, but the bulk of that is in special ed staffing, and in our prior decision to take our career specialist to a full-time, which was an expense already, the bulk of that. And then, the wellness position, which the state mandates. So I think you're doing the right thing. It's the same approach as in the past, level services, modest, line item increase in supply type stuff. I think our exposure going forward will be the technology licensing type issues, which Steve's pointed out. But generally, to me, this is a responsible stab at it. And I know we'll talk about it going forward. That's my take.
The other thing that will obviously be produced for the January 6th would be the CIP budget. We'll bring forward. We're working our way through that as well. But one of the biggest pieces that, quite honestly, I'm just not ready yet with is the CIP for technology. There's a lot of balls up in the air on that one that we need to really kind of pull in on and make sure how we're going to achieve it. Obviously, with the wireless network that we've added here at the high school, and the hope to have the 7th and 8th grade sections done this year online, it's not so much the wireless that becomes the problem. The bottleneck really becomes how much data can you move. And really what we need to do is get this entire system up to a 1 gig system to be able to handle the requests that are being pushed across it for information. And so we've got a lot of work to do on that. That has to do with switch gear. It has to do with bandwidth that we're dealing with from the outside, whether it's Comcast or our own fiber network itself. So that's one of the component areas that I'm trying to kind of get a better handle on to know where we're going to have to go expense-wise. But and I think once we can accomplish that, then I think a lot of these other areas will, be a little bit better off as well. So.
Okay, so you don't need any kind of consensus, because obviously this is a
Nope.
moving
We're gonna-
target, it's more
this takes us
informational at
usually
this
3
point in time.
meetings, so
Right,
we'll be
Okay.
happy to come back in January 6th with that increased, additional information and about the wellness position.
Right.
great,
Thank
thank
you.
you. Thank you very
Thank
much. All right, we're a little behind schedule, so we'll see what we can do here. FY14 budget update.
Well, actually, this will catch you right up, because there are really no changes in the budget from last month. Most of the payroll things kind of, feather themselves out in the first few months of the year, so we don't really see any additional changes on the payroll side of it right now. And expense-wise, again, we're just getting into the whole heating season and all of that, so it's a little too early for us to see that. As you know, the main expenses relative to supplies within any one of the buildings, it's really tasked on each of the principals to live within their budgets. So you're not going to see, changes in those areas because they know what they have to spend and they know how they have to get to the end of the year. So at this point, I wouldn't see any changes at all, because they're doing what their jobs are, and that is to maintain their educational side of it with the funding that they have. So really the only changes I would see potentially would be in things that I would control more on the operational side, and it's way too early. So It is what it is from last month, and no change at this point.
You need a vote from us or is this more of just
No,
an
you
update?
won't.
It's just preliminary, we
No
don't need.
change.
Preliminary presentation and discussion. We'll just keep going.
Okay.
To be continued.
All right, thank you, Bill. All right, so enrichment challenge opportunities.
Yes,
Ellie.
when we did our school district goals in July at our retreat, and we put timelines to many of those things, the timeline was December for an update on enrichment and challenge opportunities. So, for the specific goal, and our shared goal, district goal says to monitor progress and pursue new opportunities for enrichment and challenge with associated review of budgetary impact. So this is good timing because we can speak to these things and then also speak to why you didn't see any specific big ask in the budget. So, as you know, this goal is also aligned with my 2-year personal superintendent goal, one of them, the student learning goal, which said by June 2014, because this started a year ago, the number of district-wide opportunities for advanced learning, enrichment, and challenge will increase by at least 20% at each level. Our baseline data, which was current opportunities, the baseline data was collected in June 2012 to measure the goal, and you can see how many opportunities we had. I want to go on record at the beginning and saying this is not a clean count. It is really impossible to count this scientifically, so I'll give you an example. Differentiated instruction, which we expect in every classroom, is an opportunity to advance student learning or to challenge students, but we count that as one. Every club or activity are counted as one. The BEEP program, the Borough School After Enrichment, Borough Enrichment After School Program, is counted as one plus, like I mentioned it in there, because yes, there are after-school things for kids to select from, but it's 4 weeks. So how do you compare an enrichment opportunity that lasts 4 weeks at Borough to a club at another school that lasts the full year, for example? So it's impossible to count apples to apples. So I'm going to say this is a bunch of fruit. So it's different. There's apples, bananas, there are apricots and peaches and everything else in here. But here's where we stand now, and then the actual percentage increase as part of my mid-cycle review in February, since it is my goal that I will have that for you so that you can take a look at that, and then certainly again at the end of the year. But at the elementary, opportunities added last year during the 2012-13 school year, or not previously counted when we did the baseline. There were 2 things in here that someone neglected or left out. So we've had actually 13 new additions to the elementary level. The Borough School added 3 opportunities: the Friends for Change Club, which is basically community service, robotics and drama. The IGO School added 4: the Friends for Change Club, the Hoedown, karate, and box fitness. But they took out chorus. So you'll see 5 additions, but 1, 2, 3, 4.
Right.
Yeah. But chorus is no longer running, so that's a decrease of 1. Taylor added 6 opportunities: Zumba, karate, square dancing, the Memory Book Club, the Friends for Change Service Club, and the school play. And as I said, this data does not capture the rich variety of choices offered through the Borough School's BEAT program, which is organized and run to their great credit by the Borough School PTO. At the middle school, 4 opportunities were added: virtual high school, that students have the opportunity to experiment, certain students who are capable of advancing, to add a virtual high school course elective to their schedule. There's a new grade 6 enrichment math challenge. There are grade 8 electives that have been added, and the grade 7 Exchange City had existed before but wasn't counted in the baseline. The high school added 6 various new clubs last year, and the full list of clubs I do have. If you're interested in that, I could bring it back. New opportunities that already have been added or are expected to be added for the current 2013-14 school year, and some of these are still under discussion that we're planned to try out in the second half of the year. At the elementary school, a difference of 1 to 4 clubs plus the BEEP expansion. The IGO is starting a leadership academy to develop student leadership. That's Mr. Stanton's idea. We're in the process of seeing if we can add a club about math logic games, art, which came out in the student interest survey that you saw last spring, and cooking clubs, which also was very, very high on students' list. And
That's
those are still
interesting.
in the planning process. Let's see. Okay. At the middle school, there are actually 14 new opportunities either already implemented or under construction. The grade 7 honors math, grade 9 math course occurring at the Ahern for students who advanced. Readers Writers Workshop, you heard about at a recent meeting, and that truly is an opportunity for students to be challenged and advance at their own level. Grade 5 enrichment math, the FIT with double T's, FIT in health, and 9 new after-school clubs that are being pursued or have been started. The ADC Drama Festival, Awaken Your Mind Club, the Jazz A Cappella Choir, Lego League, the Micro Performance Band at the middle school level, Reading Club, Video Editing Club, which is different from the Ahern Broadcasting Club, I want to go on record to say. The Cooking Club, which we're working on. Bill is working with food service people to see what we can provide for that, because that does require a little more planning than some of the clubs. And the Future City competition, which is called Engineer Your Future, is something that Sue and people have been looking into. The Foxborough High School added 7 new opportunities this year. One is AP Physics, which started in September, and 6 new clubs. Community Warriors, which is a local service club, Dance Club, Engineering Club, the Flames of War Club, Game Making Club, which is gaming, which is high student interest, Mock Trial, and then the new club Helping Hands, which is global awareness, actually substitutes for a previous club that you might have seen on a list called Invisible Children. So the current status is there are 36 Foxborough High School clubs in total, so that's a great variety of things that students might have interest in or want to join. So the exact percentages, since some of these are in progress and may happen, and some may not be able to happen this year. So during my mid-cycle review in February, I'll tell you exactly where we are and calculate the percentages there. And we do continue to focus on more enrichment and challenge opportunities. And I think this is a great example of when everybody takes something on as a goal and we talk about it, and it then becomes part of the practice of what we do. So I think after the 2-year period, we're actually starting to feel that this is becoming something we automatically do, is look for new opportunities, enrichment and challenge, and that's the whole purpose of having a goal, is to put a spotlight on something, and then after a while it becomes part of what you do and your spotlight can go elsewhere. Like STEM, maybe.
I have a question for Mrs. Abrams, since she's been kind enough to hang out with us for so long. And this is unprepared, so I recognize that. But if you had to speculate at the percentage of the middle school kids that participate in some activity like the ones that have been listed, is it 50%? Is it 25%? Is it 75%? What would you guess? I know it's a very hard question because there's so many activities. How many of our students are taking advantage of an opportunity or more? Would you guess?
I would say that it's increased, and I would say right now we're a couple hundred more than last year, because the teachers take attendance, and as we've added more things in response to what they're saying, they are coming more. Some of them are there for extra help, which gets in the way of a club. But as we provide more support within a classroom and differentiate in the reading workshop, they may not have to stay for extra help. They can get it within the context of that classroom and have the opportunity. So I would guesstimate that we're a little over 50%, whereas, and I would say that's a couple hundred kids more than about a year ago.
Where we were. Thank you.
That's good. Good question, too, because you do
That's
wonder how many are
mostly
taking
based on
advantage
fact.
of these opportunities.
And in the high percentages, these clubs are, as you've said, enrichment. It's not balloon making. It's not something that we're
It's definitely something that can
No.
either expand the curriculum,
right.
provide more challenge, or help them explore an area of interest they might have that they wouldn't otherwise be able to.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know
But
how
I
you
mean, our
guys do
budget,
clubs,
our
but this
budget's,
might be a good time.
it's year over year, it's down, but the budget's still gone up, and our student enrollment is sort of flattened out in a low. But we are adding APs, we're adding
Yes.
these enrichment courses. If we have to fund these clubs one way or another to get consistency and people rolling, that's great, but we.
But you see all the
still-
things that have happened, and you didn't see us asking for more money in the budget.
I
Just
agree.
wanna
That's
make note of
no.
that.
That's no. I'm.
So
s-
that's the
Deb,
that is
no. What I'm
exactly
saying
right.
is that we have good.
Yeah.
We have excellent, and it's not soft and squishy, but it's still really expensive. Yuck.
What are you saying that's really expensive?
Well, like,
Unless you're
I'm
following.
going back to the park thing, like these sort of, I don't know, it's unfunded mandate,
Oh,
the right
you're
way to
talking
go
about
with
just the
it.
whole budget. rather
Just the
than-
whole budget, yeah. Somebody's
Oh, okay.
looking at these numbers, it's like, well, year over year, we're down, but if you look back to 2010, it's up, up, up. It just keeps increasing. And we have gas and oil and tires that we have to buy or whatever and heat. But
And
Sue might want to
we're
answer
getting
something
richer.
about
We're
clubs.
getting richer with the content, is what I'm
Please
recognizing.
come up. And then maybe we can hear from students about how they feel about us having clubs at the high school. That'd be nice to hear.
I think one aspect is the content of the club, but I think another aspect is the connection of the student to the community, which manifests itself in higher student achievement, better relationships with the teachers. So it's in a way, in some ways, a social emotional inexpensive response as opposed to, providing, other services where you can get a little closer to the student, provide what they need, discover, and, be right there in the moment. And the kids make friends. Every kid needs a friend. And if they don't have opportunities to connect with the school and be part of the school, you don't want them disenfranchised. So it's more than just the enrichment or the activity, it's the relationships that they're building with the other students in the school and being part. So that's where I think there's, that.
There's lots of research
yeah.
that says the more affinity a child has to a school, the more they bonded with that school through those things, that they'll make healthier decisions in their lives about drug and alcohol resistance, about healthy relationships. So there's a lot of research about if they feel disconnected from a school, they're more at risk for risky behavior. The more affinity they have for a school, the more likely they are to make good decisions.
I think what we're talking about
But
is.
anyway, what about clubs?
Well, I love that there's so many options, especially down in the elementary school. I think that's great because, I remember when I went to the Taylor school, we had I know I did the square dancing, which was on here, and the book clubs and stuff, and I just thought it was great because you got to be involved with so many people.
That's right.
My first year here, I was actually involved in a lot of the clubs
You
here.
were.
If you went, so if you go through the yearbook from last year, you'll see me in.
We'll see
a
your
lot
picture in each
a
of
lot
the.
of pictures.
I don't know how you're going to keep it up. I mean, that sort of set a high bar.
Yeah, and this year, I'm not involved in as many this year, but I am looking to join a few later throughout the year. One thing that's been very consistent with me is yearbook club, and that's been a really big thing with me and Miss Pillsbury. I love her.
And you're here twice a month, and it doesn't even count as a club.
Yeah.
Maybe we could be a club.
We are enriching.
Yeah. And challenging you to get involved in local government.
I think it's really important how these clubs are engaging our students on all different levels. And like you said, it provides the foundation for them to be, have opportunities to be successful in a lot of different areas that maybe they might not have had a chance. So I think it's very impressive. I want to see the list continue to grow and get, again, we're using also the resources like our surveys to engage our stakeholders, which are our students, and participate. So I think it's great that the numbers are increasing. We're moving in the right direction.
I have to be honest. My initial reaction when I read this, when I get the packet, was how much of this is fluff. And it's because, I sit here being very interested in driving instructional excellence. So I'm looking for all of them to say AP Physics. Or, and when we first did, I go back to thinking about Kathy Rangione and the task force she led for us several years ago about enrichment and challenge. And I think back then our thinking was it was around high-end academic programs.
In the strategic planning process, you mean?
Yes. And I think what my own thinking has evolved to, as Mrs. Abrams said, and as you've always said, offering a wide variety of programs to kids is equally, if not more important. So I went through this a couple times thinking, what is my reaction to that? Clearly, you're going to achieve your objective of the 20% benchmark, which is terrific.
I feel, after I created that memo, I feel a little safe on that one.
Yeah, I think you're okay. If I did my math right, I think you're going to.
Even I was surprised, though, I have to say.
Well, and it's And it's thanks to a lot of hard work at the school building level and staff
question.
stepping up to do these programs. And so I guess my focus then ultimately turned to, okay, how much are we leveraging these programs? Which is why I asked the question to Mrs. Abrams that I did. And what are we doing to, I don't know, Katie, if we need more of them. You just said, let's have the list increase. Maybe we've got enough. Maybe we need to drive more. So
I think we might have expanded to the point where there's plenty of choice. But I don't think we were there before. I don't think there was enough choice before for a variety of things. And I think to Sue's point, if you go to an after-school club with a teacher and get to know them, and then you might want to take the AP course that they're teaching because you've gotten to build a relationship with that person, and they're like, come on, you can do it. So I think it's got a lot of hidden benefits that we're not counting on when we just read a list of clubs. I think that it is like it plants a seed in a student that can have many more effects that
I agree.
Isn't really originally what you might imagine when they just say, I think I'll try that club. Anything that can motivate a student to want to build relationships and do well in school does help them in the more advanced subjects.
For sure.
Well, I think also, too, there are academic things here listed. AP, I mean,
Yes.
not everybody's going to take AP Physics, but we want to have that opportunity for the small group of students who want to. We have grade 7 honors math.
That's
which
right.
Before,
A
we
lot of
only
them
had
are.
it grade 8 at the Ahern.
And the
Grade
Borough
9
School people are trying to morph their BEEP into more, their BEEP program into more academically
Right.
oriented choices
Right.
than before. So I think that
I mean-
everybody is on the same page about that.
Yeah, and it's like Steve said, it's not a list of balloon making, I think was your example, right?
Yeah, which is a, great trade. I couldn't make it, but there's other people that can do it and make a good living at it. I'm not knocking it.
And I think if you remember our surprise at the survey, I don't want to say surprise, but it's like I had an aha moment because I think as adults and parents we're thinking of those, the other more academic classes, academic clubs thing. But when we asked the students, they were the things like cooking and art. So what they're saying to us is if we created this expansion list of clubs and activity based on what we thought, they wouldn't sign up. So we have to say, what is it that they want to expand their world? And what could inspire a career? Maybe a club that has to do with, Friends for Change gets them involved in politics. Maybe, a club in, all of these could suggest careers that they then want to go and they're more motivated to take certain courses or electives because they've really found a special interest or passion in that area. And that's the whole idea for clubs.
Well, I was particularly struck with how the clubs at the elementary school level fit with the school improvement plans that we heard at 2 meetings ago, particularly the Friends with Change, because each of the elementary schools had a community service element in their school improvement plan. And also, particularly at the middle school, I thought there was a lot of meat there, that there were so many opportunities for enrichment during the school day with virtual high school, with the grade 8 electives.
Exactly.
I think there's such a wide variety of electives that gives the students an opportunity to study something they might not get in their regular curriculum day, but that they might be passionate about. I was at a friend's house and her daughter was taking fashion design and she pulled out her drawings to show me. And, she was clearly very enthusiastic about this subject. So I think it could spark an interest in somebody that they might not get. They only get art for half a year. So it's another opportunity, fashion design, to express an artistic bent. I know Katie just mentioned grade 7 honors math, grade 9 math, the readers writers workshop, the grade 5 enrichment math, and
I would say the majority of them at the middle school are academically oriented.
And even the after-school clubs, I know my son went to a geography fair meeting today to participate in a club, but it's a competition-based club that they'll go to Bridgewater State in April. So I think when we say club, there are different levels of club, but they're all good.
Last year.
But I think that they definitely are all striving to meet the school improvement plan objectives, the strategic plan objectives, and we are doing good things in enrichment and challenge for all students across the board.
I think, too, that what you made the statement about a lot of the the differentiated instruction. But even looking at our teaching and learning highlights from earlier this evening, 7 senior students attended Bristol Community College last fall, and they all earned a college credit.
Right.
That's an opportunity to challenge
That's
our students. So it's embedded, like you always talk about, in so many of the content areas on a day-to-day basis, and the opportunities. And we talked about real-life experiences, but here these students actually had an opportunity to go to school, and then we had other opportunities, as the young lady was talking about, at the Y, the swim
Right.
classes.
And that's just in one course area.
Exactly.
That's
And we
just in
hear-
American Sign
yes,
Language.
and we hear this a lot when we have students and teachers coming, talking about teacher and learning highlights. So, so I think, good point well taken though, Bruce. We can look at this list and let's just not look at it, just as a singular thing, saying these are our opportunities for enrichment and challenges.
Or to
because-
advance their learning.
Right, because there's so many others.
I think it's a
So-
pretty darn good list.
But it is, it is.
It's a sturdy list. Could I ask one of the students a question? You said that you were in the, when you came in, you joined a lot of clubs?
No.
You're on the air.
Me?
It's like class, you're getting called upon.
You both impressed the heck out of me. I always love when you hear. And you said something very interesting. You said when you first got here, you had joined a lot of the different clubs and activities.
Yeah.
And you came into this school system a little later than some students who've grown up in it, right? And to Principal Abrams' point, did that help you integrate and start to, know the students and the teachers and those sorts of things? Because, look at you now, look at you here participating, and I don't even know if you sleep. You do so many things.
I say yeah, definitely, because when coming here from like a totally different school where everything was totally different, I came here and just like I kind of just started to meet other teachers, and like now, like one of my favorite departments is the English department, because I've had the same English teacher 2 years in a row, but yet I talk to all the English teachers, and I stay in their rooms and I just talk to. I can stay in like Miss Bryant's room. I can stay in her room for like an hour and we just talk, and it's just I just feel like I've bonded with so many teachers that I probably will not have. That I never have in my 4 years here, but.
And that doesn't happen during the academic day.
Yeah, and it doesn't happen, and I wouldn't be able to have that bond with them if it wasn't for the.
And when Alaman left and square dancing, you have to do the same thing, right? You have to be comfortable with who you are partnered up with.
Yeah, and also, like, I'm really involved with student council,
Uh-huh.
so I've gotten to know Miss Cardulo really well, and she's one of my favorite teachers at the school, and I don't even have her for a class.
There you go. Thanks for the hot chocolate, by the way. You guys sent us over packets of hot chocolate from the student council. That went over really well, thank you.
Oh, good. You're welcome.
So do you spread the word, like you should, to students that might be sort of laying low, like you should try this program or that club or this stay after? I have a child and I like her staying after school for all sorts of reasons, not,
Oh, yeah, I'm after, like, every day until at least 3 o'clock.
I'm here every day.
Through supper.
I think
You're
we
still
have
here, actually, aren't you?
Right. You're hyper after
I
school
pretty
now.
much stay in this school, yeah. I was after today for some choir stuff, and then tomorrow I'll be after for French exchange, because I'm going to France, and we have a meeting for that. And Wednesday I'll be here for a long time because we have a yearbook, and I want to be a editor junior and senior year, so I have to
That
really,
takes up a lot of time.
yeah, so I have
but it's
to really
really
work hard, and I have to really kind of study and follow the editors we have now, and yeah.
It's involved in a lot. I have a feeling, Rebby, when you graduate, I'm gonna have to remind you that you did. Like, you graduated. But come by anyway. No, it's great,
right,
but
well-
that's part of the life, so we worry more about kids who don't feel an affinity to any of this and they just go home at the end of the day, because you don't develop those kinds of relationships that they're talking about, who, you get to know people who then can motivate you, whether you have them for a teacher during the academic period or not. So that's the whole idea.
Thank you for sharing. We appreciate that. It's important.
Sorry to put you on the spot there.
All right, so we're going to move on, right?
Well, this is a great segue, yes.
Into acceptance of Stop and Shop mini grant.
Yes, so as I'm looking at what I want to say about the Stop and Shop mini grant, I'm thinking we might have another club here.
Oh, my.
Because.
Do we have room for any more
Yes,
clubs?
I would say the relationship that's developed between our food service director, Allison Johnson, our wellness director, Janelle Erskine, they work together on so many initiatives around health, nutrition, wellness. And Allison writes these grants, and that we've been awarded $2,000 from the Stop and Shop YMCA mini grant program to start school gardens at the 3 elementary schools in the spring.
Awesome.
And that would be in the spring. Grade 2 students will be planting the garden. That is part of the grade 2 science curriculum, so that's why they're going to be doing it, and because they do have a plant unit in 2nd grade. And then the following fall, when they become grade 3 students, they'll be harvesting and constructing and helping out how students will sample the homegrown foods in the cafeteria, working with the food service people.
Excellent.
So that is terrific, and Allison has also written to Whole Foods for additional funds of $2,000 each for the gardens, as well as to possibly have enough to start gardens at the middle and high school. So she'll find out about that in March. And I do want to thank, she mentioned that we have a local farmer, Mike Smith from Oakdale Farm, who has been helping with donations of seeds and plants from his farm, as well as lending his expertise. So we'll keep you posted. But she works really hard at pursuing these very creative and unique opportunities that could result, who knows, in a garden club. And a real garden club, I don't mean flowers, I mean food, and then learning about the food.
That's pretty cool.
Which is really cool.
That's awesome. Do you need us to? Yeah,
Yes, so I would love a motion to accept the donation of $2,000 from the Stop and Shop Hockomock Area YMCA mini grant.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? 5-0.
With much gratitude. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Okay, now we're going to move on to other matters. And I did, I'll just, oh, yes.
Can I have one other matter?
Yes. Why did you come forward? Yes.
Just wanted a commercial interruption here for the people at home. I think the last time we were here, we talked about Katie Greer coming on January 21st. However, that date has changed due to the high school midterms being on that day. So Katie Greer, who is...
They have the information in their packet.
Okay.
Yes.
But the people at home...
Yes,
please.
What is the date?
It's January 7th. Katie Greer will be coming to the high school presentation for 2 presentations for the 2 halves of the high school, however it gets sorted out, 2 presentations at the middle school, a grade 5, 6, and 7, 8, and a parent presentation at night at 6:30 at Foxborough High School. And she will go over some interesting tidbits from her website. It says, our kids are doing what? What can I do to protect them? What app should I be worried about? Is social networking safe? Is my child being cyberbullied? What's texting, sexting? What's next? It's overwhelming being a parent today in our technology-driven society. You can find this information out at katiegreer.com. It's about an hour-and-a-half presentation for ages 18 and above. So do not bring anybody under the age of 18. She'll be going over some information. The grade 5-6 presentation is tailored to 5th and 6th graders. 7 and 8 is 7th and 8th graders, high school to high schoolers, with information that's developmentally appropriate for that age. And this is one of the things that can enrich parents in helping to understand what their kids are doing on Instagram and a few other sites that
we haven't heard of yet, some of us.
Well, some of them we've heard of,
it
but we
does say
haven't.
on her thing, the information that Sue had sent me, because at the time of the packet last Thursday, we didn't have the flyer yet, but she is a former intelligence analyst for the Massachusetts State Police and the former Internet Safety Coordinator for the Massachusetts Attorney General's Office. So it'll be interesting. She's very lively. Some people have seen her. I know Amy has. And she was in Mansfield a few months ago to very high regard. So the only question is, when is the flyer gone out to families that's official?
The
from
flyer is
us?
being edited right now
Okay.
by Foxborough High School student.
Nice.
And as soon as it gets approved, hopefully tomorrow, it will be out this week, and it'll be up on our website, but I just wanted to let everybody know that's not the 21st. It is the 7th at 6:30 here at Foxborough High School Auditorium. Hoping for a large crowd of parents and over 18s to get informed about what's going on in technology on that iPhone, behind the scenes on the iPad, and in the wireless environment.
What day of the week is that? Do you
That's
know?
Tuesday.
Tuesday.
After your
Awesome.
Monday meeting.
Okay, great.
Sue, would the audience also be for, say, grandparents who might be watching, their grandchildren after school, that sort of thing? Maybe
Anybody over-
Foxborough Cable could get it up on the scroll or something like that? I
Well,
don't
it's
know.
an
Do we
18 or
do that?
over.
18 or
No,
over.
because it's an 18 or over
Oh, so you can't put
presentation.
that up on there?
Might not want to.
No.
It's really for adults to share information about what's happening
Okay.
on the internet, so I don't know if we would put that up.
But they're welcome to.
Oh, not the presentation, just the ad.
Oh, that's
Just the
different.
announcement, not the show.
I thought you
I'm
said something
sorry.
about videotaping
Yeah.
and putting it up.
No, I don't even, I only watch G-rated stuff.
We'll be getting it out to the newspaper as well, but that's a very good idea.
And the patch and all those places, so as soon
Okay.
as we get that tomorrow, we can take care of that.
Okay?
Thank you
Wonderful.
very much. Thank you. Thank you for being here this evening. Okay, so.
Bill has another matter, if you want a quick one.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, we received a letter from the MSBA last week that the Borough project has not been shortlisted, so they are going to go out for another offering in February. So obviously, we'll re-prepare our documents and send it. I think I kind of said to you up front, based on the demand that was out there and our being in there for the first year, unless the building literally had fallen down, it was not likely they were going to fund it. So, fortunately, we did do the repairs we did this summer to the roof and stuff like that, so we should be, okay. But, obviously, it's still a priority of ours, and we will look through the statement of interest that we prepared for last year and see if there's any additional tweaks we can put on it that might make it more appetizing to them to bite on next year.
So when are you going to resubmit that?
It has to be submitted before the end of February, so.
Okay, so,
I mean, no surprise. They had indicated there were a lot of schools, since they had that little moratorium, there are a lot of schools across the state that are in much worse shape than ours, so I
Okay.
don't know if this is like, well, no good deed goes unpunished.
okay.
We need to
All
go
right,
with
well,
that.
keep us posted.
There are a lot of schools. I mean, we personally know other districts with schools in absolutely desperate condition, so it wasn't a surprise to us that we didn't get in the first round of selection.
Okay. So not to be discouraged, we'll.
No,
keep,
again, I think I told you last time it was 260 that were brought forward, only about 65 of them got it.
Okay.
So obviously you knew that pent-up demand was coming forward. Ironically, this time they said they had about 250, so only like 50 more were added to the list. So, again, depending on the need, I think the borough does have some significant issues that we want to address before we do have, obviously, much larger issues. But, and I think they also understand that too. They do realize if you've been in a program of trying to maintain a building, but it's getting to the point where, the cost could be just too absorbent to fix, then,
Right.
I think that will push the priority list up, so.
Okay, thanks for that update, Bill.
Does this mean we have to push the Taylor out or think about
Yes,
it?
I mean, everything would kind of go on
Sure.
with it, so.
Did you have something?
No, I actually
Okay.
didn't.
Okay, all right, so I listed under other matters, the Town of Foxborough Racino Review
Take a
Committee summary of impact and mitigation analyses report, and you have the information in your packet that we did receive from Town Hall. So I listed it under other matters since it was identified that we were going to talk about it today, but not really there wasn't a decision yet about kind of where we're going with this discussion. So today's purpose, from my recollection, and certainly please want to hear input from the rest of the committee, is that based on the information you received, we're going to have a discussion about whether we need to pursue this in a more formalized way, putting it on the agenda. So I'm just kind of opening it up to people and wanting to get a response and feedback from the committee as to the direction people want to take. I mean, I will, it's just draw everybody's attention to, the impact that they do identify in the report, which was effects of increase in school enrollment. And based on what I could read, and people may have a different view of it, it's the kind of impacted, the impact would be 10 students to the town, and the cost of that being $128,550 per year.
Which my understanding is they used the same extrapolation they did from a Plainville study as to impact and came up with that. That wasn't something, just want to remind you, that we calculated or submitted. It's something the committee, the Racino Mitigation Committee, did themselves and used another study. So that's what it says, that they
Right.
feel, they assess the impact at 10 students for a total of, what you see there, 100
But that number's tied to a float, right?
to.
For what?
Well, every year it costs more money to educate a child. So if that document is asking for, let's round it to 100, let's call it 128,000. We just looked at a budget that saw our budget go up. So what's it going to be in 3 years for those presumably 10 students, whether they have special needs, none, a mix of some? We know our certain aspects of our budget are justifiably very expensive. I have a problem with that number not moving or being tied to some kind of legitimate bellwether of some kind, because 5 years from now, it's not going to be $128,550 to educate 10 students. It might be significantly more than
I
that.
sort of had the opposite reaction, because this is the first time we'd seen that, and, we weren't part of any of that, as you know.
Well, that's
But
the other
when-
thing. Can
when-
you just clarify that in terms
Yes,
of these numbers are
this is a
coming from-
committee that was, well, I guess I don't know that
They're an
much,
ad
but
hoc of the Board of
ad hoc
Selectmen.
by the Board of Selectmen,
Yeah.
and they were operating and doing their homework and did a lot of work, clearly, you can see from the report. But we weren't part of creating the report.
That's right.
We had, actually, I spoke to the chair, he called them, they spoke to him the day before.
Right.
They needed information due, which was fine. But in the end, what I see is where it was too late for us to do anything at that point. I mean, it was a Tuesday and the meeting was Wednesday night, I believe. But the net effect is, the biggest cost that one could, I guess, argue that is a mitigation element is the effect on an increased enrollment. It would be the highest thing, I think, in anyone's mind. And the fact that they were able to include it, extrapolating from the other impact study, and they put it in there, and they only think it's 10 students. I mean, we can absorb 10 students, really without a lot of cost, just like, any time. Now, our student enrollment could go up by 10 in any given year, and you don't see, scrambling going on. So I actually read that and said, oh, okay, they put something in anyway, and their studies show it's only 10 students, so I actually am not worried about it. Maybe excited, I don't know.
Yeah, and I would take it another step. I mean, we can get 10 students just in a housing development that's built
Right.
tomorrow. So for 10 students more to come in, there has to be housing for 10 students more. So that means they're going to an existing apartment, existing condo, existing house, or buying a new house. That's no different than happens every day. If they were saying 100 students, I would say that there's a significant, differential here. The ironic thing is what you look at what Plainville is doing, and that's, the huge apartment complex that was built right across the street from it. Now, there's a load problem. I mean, they're going to definitely have it. We don't have that, and that's not even available in this town right now. That type of growth is going to happen. So I guess in Deb's court, I don't see this, if that's the potential issue, I don't see this as a budget buster in any way, shape on our side.
I mean, our school enrollment is down so low, we can take several more students than that and still not even be at capacity.
Because if you thought about it, if it was 10 students and it was spread across the district, what's that mean? One more student in a class on a level? Not even
I
a
know,
class.
we have 5 schools to spread these 10. I mean, it has no impact at all about hiring or anything. It's a normal flow.
It's not, and I also feel like let's say this happens and it opens and we have 10 more students that year than we did last. How many of them are from Racino versus not? I don't even know. Are there families? So the families move in and move out all the time, and I actually, that was my reaction. I was like, okay, so they had some type of data from, that they can extrapolate from, and it's only 10, that I felt,
I think
relieved.
with the programs we're offering, the reputation, I mean, look at the number of applicants just to teach in this area or become part of the administration. Foxborough is becoming a town that attracts. I think we're going to get these students anyway. I don't think.
We
and
might,
the
but
average
the housing
Racino-
isn't blowing up. I think Bill's point that increases in enrollment that are dramatic are completely tied to housing availability. And we're not gonna see a big boon in available housing, as Foxborough has little land to build on, and they're huge projects. So I don't see why we can't absorb whatever it is, and they did put it in there as opposed to not being able to put it in there, so. And
I don't see it
So,
as a
I guess
potential
the-
problem.
Yeah, I don't know if anyone else has thoughts about this, or where, I mean, what I think was kind of interesting is that a phone call was made to you, the day before this.
Well, he had called the Friday before, but I didn't know who he was or why he was calling.
Right.
So then, I think it was leaving town meeting that Monday, he approached Bill and said, oh, I need a call back because we have a meeting Wednesday. So I quickly called him the next morning and not realizing they were actually wrapping up this report that
Okay.
next night. So there wasn't outreach to the committee or to us as administration, but actually after reading what they have in there, I thought, okay, they were able to do it anyway.
Right.
So,
Have we learned anything more about any other districts, school districts, neighboring districts doing anything?
no, not that I know of, no.
Well,
I've asked around.
I mean, I'm not very smart on this stuff, but my reaction is, it's great that we're included, that there's a recognition that schools and kids might be impacted, but I don't feel the need to take further action as a school committee at this time, and unless our selectmen told us they wanted us to do something or look at something, or.
But I also found it very interesting that in the newspaper, they said the selectmen have backed the idea of a November vote of perhaps no gambling in Massachusetts. I mean, if this all becomes a wash, if that passes.
Well, Steve, you've been most active, I think, or aware of all this. Do you think there's something we should be considering as a committee at this point?
Absolutely.
Which is?
I went to the Racino Mitigation Committee meeting as a citizen about, I don't know, let's call it a month or two ago. And that's when I voiced my opinions about the concerns of a parent and what effect that business venture will have on our community. I would consider the information in this report, in part, the genesis of me making those comments at that meeting. Another meeting that I've just been to, which I was actually very surprised that there was very few people at it from Foxborough, was the meeting with Penn National and the Massachusetts Gaming Commission that was publicized, where Penn National talked about their plans for the Racino, along with the citizens of Plainville, who I have great respect for and understand why they might want to have that Racino in their community. And there was one person at that meeting who spoke and even mentioned schools. For us to not have, and what frustrates me the most about this report is, and I said this before, is that it's a fractured communication process between what I don't clearly understand, and that's this. Who contacts us, the board, the school committee of the Foxborough School District, to ask us if we want to weigh in on any of this and ask for substantially less, none, the moon, whatever. But the same way that we can think about how the Racino, the gambling in the state may go away, I would like to have my powder dry and think, well, I want to be prepared for what may be the worst based on statistical data here that's at least reasonable to consider. At least reasonable to consider. And so what I would like to find more about is, how does the continuing Foxborough mitigation process work? as it applies to the different departments and stakeholders here in town, as we, as a town collectively, school districts, human services, water departments, public safety, whatever, go to future mitigation discussions with this organization, Penn National. This isn't a negotiation with the town of Plainville. This is a negotiation, a mitigation discussion with the state regulatory people who will arbitrate if required, with a private venture going into a town that's already accepted it. In the, I think it was 76% of the people in town voted for it. So now we have a business over there, and it has effects in this report. Some may or may not be directly related to the school district, but we're talking about validated driving under the influence increases here.
But Steve, what, when you talk about the process, which I think we need to focus more on, because I think the specifics,
Absolutely.
I
That was
am
my-
not equipped to really, based on this report, to
And
make
there is a
to make
business there
judgment.
now. I think we
So-
need to mention that. There is a business there
There
now.
is a business there now.
But this was a committee that was assembled by the Board of Selectmen. So everything that you're talking about right now, I don't know, is this committee aware of what you're talking about, this meeting and this company and?
Katie, you've answered my own question. What, you've actually, I'm sorry.
I've answered
You-
it? I
no,
don't think
you
I have the
haven't.
answer, but.
I'm sorry. You've reinforced my own question. I guess the question is, what's going on with mitigation as it applies to the school committee? Where do we weigh in? When? Have we missed a boat? Is the boat not undocked yet? Because when I was at the selectmen's meeting the other night, they were talking with our town council, not our school committee council, but our town council, about moving forward with the mitigation process with Penn National. Again, not the town of Plainville.
Of course, we have a representative in the audience, not to put you on the spot, whether you want to come forward and speak to this, or whether we want to talk
Well,
about this
I'm
at
just
another,
frustrated with this.
time. I mean, it's, you are here. Welcome, please.
Thank you.
Say your name.
I'm
So
John
everyone
Gray,
knows.
Board of Selectmen. Steve's question is actually an appropriate one because things are moving along, and the two representatives from the Board of Selectmen that are spearheading this, Jim DeVellis and Mark Sullivan, along with our town council, Gellerman. And Attorney Gellerman has had meetings with Penn National, and they're progressing. And you saw the result the other night where they were talking about levels of, give me the word.
Escrow.
Escrow, thank you.
And I wasn't happy with their numbers, by the way.
But a good question is, was the school department, was the school committee involved or even asked? And the answer is, I'm gathering, no. And it's somewhat surprising that the impacts that this report spell out could affect. And again, who knows if those numbers are right? It could be 10, it could be more, it could be 2. I don't know. But the fact that the school department was left out, would you say, Bill?
Well, we were never included.
Never
in the
included,
discussions,
yeah.
right,
And Steve's question is, have we missed the boat? I guess it's up to this committee to get together and decide whether or not they want to engage and get on the boat. So I think it's timely, maybe a little bit late, but I think it's important that this committee decide if they want to be part of the mitigation negotiation process, or at least give input to Dick Gellerman as he goes through the process. Ultimately, it's a decision that's going to be borne by the Board of Selectmen, but if there's going to be impact, I think the school department needs to weigh in.
How do we
Was that
do
discussed, do you mind me just, was that discussed at one of your meetings? Are you here as a representative kind of communicating to us, or are you just here because you're in the audience? I mean, I'm just wondering.
I'm just here because I haven't been to a school committee meeting in about
Okay.
7 years.
Okay. I'm just trying to understand.
I called John and I said, if you could make it, that'd be great, because I don't know what the heck's going on.
Okay.
Yeah, Steve did
So-
call me today, and he asked about the process, and I said, honestly, it's ultimately, if an agreement is reached, it'll be signed by the Board of Selectmen. We have a Racino committee who has given us input, and honestly, when you look back, you say, has that Racine committee gone to every particular department in town and gotten their input so that they could say, all right, how's this going to affect you? And Steve used the word fractured, and if they didn't come to this committee, or perhaps they asked for some information late in the process.
Right, I would say it wasn't timely, but it wasn't what, I guess, it wasn't what do you think, what might your areas of interest be? Could I, as a conduit, communicate that to the board? It was basically a surprise, but we came up with these 3 areas, and I need a number attached to them by tomorrow night.
Right, but the
So
question
I
should have
said,
been, what are your
well, we don't have a meeting, so
Right.
I don't even know if those are the 3 things, the right things, and we certainly couldn't attach a number to them. So, and I did call the committee members individually, and then it was not timely. But I guess, given the 3 things that they said they needed a number to, and then we didn't participate because of the lack of timeliness, but the biggest ticket item, they do have a number next to it. So at this point, I would say, could it have gone differently? Sure. But at this point, what I'm left wondering is this. Is there some big ticket item that we believe, or that we suspect, or that we feel passionately about, that we should try to insert ourselves back into the process for? And I can't figure out what that would be. So, yes, could it have gone differently? I think, sure. With more communication involvement at some step, but because I don't even know if numbers 2 and 3, I mean, the first one that's in there about the added population seems to me rightly so included, but the other, I can't remember what the third thing was, but the second thing that I do see in there that doesn't have a number, I don't know if I even agree with that, nor have we had an opportunity to talk about it, so I'm
But
less.
the impact of problem gambling, was that?
Right, I
what
mean,
you're
there
getting
are
at?
all kinds of, vices in the world, and we have a curriculum about how
Right.
children make healthy decisions, and certainly addiction of all kinds is included in our curriculum, so to me, that wasn't a new, thing, we suddenly have to have a big curriculum, we have things like that, so that to me, I don't think it would have a price next to it, because it's something we incorporate anyway, and people go buy lottery tickets, so the addiction and how you make healthy decisions about how you live your life is already part of our curriculum. So I think it's great that they were able to extrapolate from a study to say, we estimate about 10 students and put a number next to it, but I don't see any other thing that's big enough to worry about, for me, from my perspective, that I would want to say to the committee, we need to be more aggressive reinserting ourselves into the process. I just don't see what that is. And maybe I'm not seeing something. I agree with that. That's possible, but I can't for the life of me figure out what that would be. That's where I stand. So could it have been different? Sure, but these people worked hard. They got the biggest ticket number item in there. It will ultimately be up to the selectmen. I don't know what else it is that we would pursue that I'm worried about.
I'll talk to Dick Gellerman and ask if he would think that input from the school committee would be valuable at this point.
Okay.
Personally, I think it would be, because when you're talking about social effects, they'll show up in the school first. They'll show up in kids, and they may be massed elsewhere. And I know you have programs to absorb that and handle it. But I'll talk to Dick Gellerman and see if he would like some input from the school committee.
Okay.
If it was overlooked. To Steve's point, I think at least asking the question, and if everyone says we're fine, well, that's great. But I will ask that. I'll bring it up. Okay.
Then I would like to ask the committee's recommendation on this suggestion. The committee's recommendation. Do we want, as a school committee, to be involved? In other words, with respect to John Gray, as an acting selectman, I think we should steer our own ship and say we want or don't want to be part of this mitigation.
Well, I think we need more information. That's the way I
But
feel.
should we create an ad hoc and go find out? Because I'll go find out anything you want about this, or we can appoint somebody to go on this. But there's enough here as a newly first-time elected person here in town that concerns me about the safety of our students, not within the bounds of our daily operation schools, but just in general. I got a 14-year-old daughter who's going to be driving in 2 years, and they're talking about a spike in Deweys. I want to know about that. We have driver's education in this town. So I want to know what skin in the game we want or don't want to have. And if the board's consensus is, let's not talk about it and let the BOS and their ad hoc committee and our town council deal with it, and then we either get whatever comes of it or nothing that comes from it, that's fine.
Well, why don't we do this?
Can I ask a question just about that? Because I'm trying to always trying to figure out, did I miss something? Is there something here I'm just not seeing? When you said, as a parent, you're concerned about, the DUIs or people on the road, I can see any parent would be concerned, and I certainly am concerned. But that's in here, and if that's a parental concern. I don't know if it's a school-related
I think it's a
concern.
completely.
Do you know what I mean?
almost
Like, they're taking
fiduciary.
care of it
It's a
in there.
citizen concern,
Under the
whether
ad
you're a
hoc
parent
committee
or
by the
not,
Board of
actually,
Selectmen,
but-
it is a citizen concern, and I see it in here, and I get why it's in there, but I don't know if that's a school committee responsibility. That's why I'm
We had no
struggling.
input to it, Deb. The school
But
committee,
what is
the
there-
school
but-
committee
well,
had no input except from my loud mouth at one meeting as a private citizen. And I know I've been told by others that sometimes in your role in town, the line is blurred when you open your mouth as a private citizen. And mea culpa to people that believe that about me, okay? But I spoke at this meeting, and I am concerned as a school committee member that these issues were discussed without any of us at the table in concert. If we're all like, no, we don't want to be part of it, then that's fine. And if it's, oh, we want to hear more and just have our ears open, then that's fine.
Yeah, but
But I'm not going to contest any of these issues or fight with them. I just want a place at the table.
Well, I don't think the school committee has a place at the table. I think it's the Board of Selectmen that have, for each of the towns, that have the place at the table. So the only real question is, do you believe that the mitigation request is either valid or invalid from the school's perspective?
Or missing
And,
something.
So I think as a taxpayer, and I'm not going to, give you my opinion any other way, but I think as a taxpayer, I think they put together a study, they used the number that we would use, which obviously is our, net school
pupil.
spending per pupil
Housing
cost.
availability.
But I don't know, maybe you guys have a better crystal ball than I do, but, I don't know what the number is. Is it 10 students? Is it 100 students? Is it no students?
Exactly.
But how are you going to
But we
figure that
don't-
out?
we don't-
There is no way to
we-
determine that number, Steve. That's my point. So I think they did a valid job on putting together a number based on some information they had,
Yeah.
but it's not going to be any different than anybody else's.
Right.
It's a guess. It's solely what it comes down to.
Bill, I saw the what was it, a vice president at the Board of Selectmen the other night from the company that's opening up in Plainville go completely on the defensive about parting with a shekel on these matters, okay? And suggest to the Board of Selectmen that if there is monies that are to be had for mitigation, that in the future, it's possible for the town to go back and ask for this money based on proof. Okay? The same group of people made a presentation in Plainville 3 weeks before, telling us how all these positive effects were going to affect the entire state in the most positive economic ways possible within its range of business. So one minute they're able to predict good, and the next minute they want to hold back and say, well, we'll wait until problems come and then we'll deal with it. Well, I want my powder to be ready and dry.
So what's your number, Steve?
Huh?
What's your number?
I don't know.
Well, then,
That's the point.
So is my absence of knowledge of the number a reason to not go forward and work with the Board of Selectmen?
Can I make two suggestions?
I was just going to, but go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'll see
Well,
if
my-
mine
my-
are the same.
I don't think we want to be ignorant on this. I appreciate the report that's been put together, although it would have been nice to have some input. But I think at least there is something that's out there. If we don't want to be ignorant, my first suggestion is why don't we ask our own attorney to just take a look at this and explore what else has been done in this area in the past and see if he feels there's a role we should be playing. That's one idea. Second idea, why don't we appoint Steve to represent us and go explore with the Board of Selectmen if there's a role that he could play as a liaison to the school committee.
or someone else. I'll do it, or someone else.
So-
It's fine with me.
I'm going to go back to John's suggestion.
Yeah, that's
that-
what I was gonna do,
that,
too.
Maybe we need to connect with
Gellerman?
Andy Gellerman, because,
First.
Well,
because
I'll ask Dick. I mean, Dick is the.
Dick Gellerman, sorry.
Yeah, Dick is,
That was a blast from the past, huh?
he's, involved in negotiations and discussions and,
So, but I think that might be the appropriate
But
thing,
I'll
because
ask
our
him,
school
uh,
attorney is about school law. It's not about town business, so I think that would maybe be doubling efforts or going off in a direction. So I would suggest he's the appropriate attorney for, if we're gonna connect with
let me
anybody.
do that. Let me ask Dick if input from the school committee would be valuable. I can't see how it wouldn't be. And then you can decide how you're going to
Yes,
give it
but
if it's asked.
Bill, how many students can we absorb and before we hit max?
I mean, it
We get
depends
max.
what
No, I mean,
grade.
there's a cost, there'll be a cost at some point per student that you add.
Right.
But I guess, my only point comes down to if you're telling me it's a few, I mean, obviously, we go up and down a few every single day in the school district. Kids come and go.
Right.
We had 2 leave the other
Yeah,
day.
but we
had
can
We go
couple
up
come,
10
so
and
it's
down
like-
10 within a
So
few
that's not the
months.
issue. The issue to
So-
me is, working with the selectmen is trying to figure out what the number is. Because in my mind, as far as what the school committees should be concerned about, the only real issue we have is A, educating the kids, how many are we gonna have? And B, is there a special demand put on the student base? As Deb has already said, if there was an issue that came up that was brand new, that we weren't facing already, we're already facing teen alcoholism, drugs, gambling, all that stuff, or we're already facing. It's not something brand new. But even if it were exasperated in an area, we would then look to up maybe that program a little, or do something that way. So you can't make any kind of financial decision on this basis without knowing, what the actual number is going to be, and I don't know how you know that number. So I think
And this
having,
is the first
finding
time
out if they
we've
want us
discussed
to
it
have
as a
some more
board.
input, we'd be glad to have the input. We didn't at the time. We'd be glad to have the input, I think, as a, at least from my perspective, I'll do whatever you guys want, to try to work the numbers through, but, I think it's really up to the selectmen if it's too late, if it's, we're on time, or,
Well,
if there's.
I
even a-
think there's a lot of unknowns here, and I think it's hard for us to jump from one point to the next without really kind of having more information. So, John, if you
I'll
could.
I'll take care of point 1, and I'll bring the answer back, and then once you have the answer, you can decide how you're gonna deal with it.
And who will
Right.
you
Well,
communicate that to?
I'm gonna talk to Mark Sullivan, Jim DeVellis, and Dick Gellerman.
And they will get back to the chair, or are we going to look at a liaison, or?
I
This is a
think
board
that
deci- is
they
this a
don't
board
need to go through
decision?
me.
This
I'm
would
ju-
be
I'm just here
our board
observing.
decision after that.
Okay, it's a board decision.
Yeah.
Okay.
have to
But I will have Mark Sullivan get back in touch with Katie.
Okay,
I
great.
think
And
that's
then I'll bring it back to the
appropriate,
committee,
connection.
and we can put it on the agenda.
I'll be
As
the
a future
liaison
way.
if somebody wants to make a motion to do
that
that.
to me
I'll be
makes-
happy.
I would like to wait until we have more information to kind of decide what we need to do. So why don't we wait till we hear back from the board, find out if it's still, there's still time, what the circumstances. I feel like we're starting to make decisions about something I don't have all the information about.
Right, and I think Dick, the attorney might, well, I'm sure, have information about what other school districts even considered, whether it ended up on anybody's list or not. So
Well, actually,
why reinvent the wheel when he
The,
probably has that?
The Racino Committee may have that. They have a ton of information.
Right.
Okay.
But again, if you, the question needs to be asked. And I think what I'll do is I'll at least try to be a bridge between the school committee and this process.
That would be
if I can.
great. That would
Okay.
be great, John. I mean, certainly, we want to make sure that we're doing what we need to do on our end, so we'll wait to hear from you, or
Thank you.
or Mark.
I don't want to miss any timeline. Should we put a timeline as to the next time we're going to talk?
I'll talk to Sullivan tomorrow.
Do you have a meeting tomorrow?
Yep.
Okay, all right, and then we have our next meeting,
January 6th.
And then you'll get back in
January.
touch with
Yeah.
Katie and we'll go from
yeah,
there.
I think, well, I'll have Mark
Mark
Sullivan
will.
get back in touch
Yep.
with Katie.
okay.
All right.
Thank
Aren't
you
you
so
glad you
much.
came, John?
Thank you very much.
Thanks, John.
Okay,
Thanks.
so we'll proceed on, whatever information I get, we can put it on as an agenda item, and I can bring forth, and then we can decide, Steve, what the next move is.
Great, thank you. Thanks
Motion to
for,
adjourn?
discussion.
Yes. Do I have a second motion?
I'll second that.
Okay, any further discussion?
I'd like to wish everybody happy holidays. This is not necessarily a restful one.
Yes.
It may all go well for everybody.
Thank
Happy
you.
holidays
All right.
and Happy New Year.
Yes.
Same to you. We won't see you till the new year.
Thank you for your participation this evening. All those in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
5-0. Thank you. Good night.